join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It sounds like something. You need to mute your.
Mute yourself. Mute yourself.
Yeah, you may need to turn your microphone or speaker off. Let's test that. One of us always does this. We're good? We're good. Okay. Jerry, I'll let you, are you running the meeting, Jerry? Or do you want me to step through the agenda?
You can do it, Amber. I'm not feeling that well,
You're-
so I didn't want to.
You don't have
come in with
volume
the
on.
Mask on.
Yeah, we have no, Jerry, you need to turn the volume on.
Okay.
While Jerry is doing that, could I just say something?
Sure.
An opening thing. You know, I don't often do this, but when you talk about American history and you talk about dates that you'll remember, December 7th, 1941, or September 11th, 2001, or perhaps November 22nd, 1963. 9 years ago today, on December 14th, 2012, Sandy Hook Elementary School experienced a tragedy where 26 people were killed. Those included 20 youngsters ages 6 and 7, along with 6 adult staff members. I think about that day constantly. And I think all of us that have children or are grandparents or great-grandparents think about the tragedy that happened that particular day. And I think it's only fitting that we start since that time. In the last 9 years, there have been literally hundreds and hundreds of school shootings with very little done to prevent these things from happening again. I don't know what it's going to take, but that day, I will remember it like it was yesterday. I cannot imagine what it would be like for a police officer or first responder to have to walk into that building to see that carnage. But I would like to take a few seconds to have a moment of silence for those 26 people that perished that day. And on behalf of their families, I pray to God that something happens, something constructive happens, and the voices of those parents that have been trying to voice their strong feelings for the last 9 years are finally heard by those that can foster change. Thank you.
Okay. Amber, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I'm in the building. I'm just in my office. I have a cold and I didn't want to get too close to anybody. Amber, if you want to take over, you can run the meeting if you would, please.
Okay. All right. We're going to start with the COVID update. Our case count has officially gone up to 100 cases. That was an increase of 3 over the week before. And the positivity rate for Suffolk County is 7.2%, which is up a full percentage point from a week ago, 6.2%. The big news is that we have the mask mandate that came down on Friday from the governor's office. And I'm going to share my screen just to highlight a couple of things. About a second. Yes, we're all having technical difficulties today. Okay, all right. So as most of you are probably already aware of, we started the Is that not working? There we go. We started with a mask mandate on effective yesterday morning. So, and it goes through January 15th. The governor has asked that everyone, all indoor public places, businesses, venues, now have to either close in any public space, pick one, either full proof of vaccination in order to enter the venue or building or office, or all persons, regardless of vaccination status, must wear a mask. One of the key questions that I know I've started off asking and other people have asked is whether or not you can mix and match. So if you want to go into a place of business, they have to decide we're either going to require everybody to be vaccinated and show proof, or everyone regardless must wear a mask. And for town hall and all town buildings, we've made a decision over a month ago that we were going to allow people to come into town, the town board meetings and work sessions and not have to wear a mask in here, but you had to show proof of vaccination. So we're continuing that policy for this room. And then the rest of town hall and all other buildings will require masks to come in. So if you come into town hall, there's a public area and we are allowing anyone to come in vaccinated or unvaccinated. So you have to wear a mask when you enter the building, but then when you come into the boardroom, you can take your masks off. And then department by department through the rest of town, it will be, if the building department decides they're only going to allow unvaccinated or vaccinated people in, then they have to show proof in order to get past the door there. And people who are in their offices, if they can close their door, they can take their mask off. So just wanted to clarify that. For the most part, it's mask only, because we need to be able to allow the unvaccinated public access to town services. And
Emily from the Fit Center reminded everybody visiting the Fit Center that the mandate holds true to the Fit Center as well. So, until that time.
Yeah. So they will allow unvaccinated people to come in and work out, but everybody will be masked.
Right.
And then New York State has a good frequently asked questions that got posted the other day. So we will put that link up on the town website so that it goes through a whole host of questions. So just wanted to make everybody aware of that change. Next item on the agenda is the Shelter Island Municipal Wastewater Treatment. There is an engineering report. Joe, do you want to do the intro for us?
Today we have a presentation from Lombardo Associates. We have two representatives from the firm, Pio Lombardo and Gary Rubenstein, who have been working on the project on behalf of the town. The project commenced back early summer. It's funded partially by a New York State DEC non-point grant to support groundwater improvements. And Pio and Gary today are going to be presenting a PowerPoint number of slides showing progress so far on the project. We've got sort of a two-phase approach here where we have concept level plan layout and a design phase. The funding that we have so far through the grant allows us to take the project through design phase to submit for permitting. So this is the first of a sequence of public outreach and project updates. And I hope you'll enjoy the show here. We have a number of individual meetings set up with particular users, which will make a little bit more sense once you see the presentation. And I'll be handling those types of queries directly through my office. So any public comments can be directed to me.
Joe, before you go, I have questions.
Sure.
For you.
Yeah.
So I'm a little, new here,
Sure. Yeah.
and I read the report with great interest, and I feel like the report made an attempt to compare it to other solutions, but the report was really about this is the solution. Am I right about that?
Which
We're not in a phase where we're comparing alternatives, are we?
which document did you review?
The full
Because
one.
The full report.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to actually let that be a part of Pio's presentation today.
okay.
He's going to walk through the sequence of the project and can talk more extensively about different solutions that could be considered.
Okay.
And I think you'll find the answer to that question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, I guess we should start screen sharing. Is that it?
Yes.
Bear with me while I get this right. Okay. Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Pio Lombardo, President Lombardo Associates, and with me is Gary Rubenstein. Gary's a senior engineer with Lombardo Associates. Gary's been with us for over 15 plus years. As Joe mentioned, we have been retained by the town to prepare an engineering plan and design of a wastewater system to address the municipal buildings in the center of Shelter Island. So that was our charge with the project. And we were requested to examine the 8 buildings that are on that table that you can see. So as you can see, we're talking about the public library, the fire department, the firehouse, the town youth center, let me call it the town hall complex here, and then the town-owned residential building to the north, the police department, the justice court building, and the school. Now, in the school, as we went through, to answer your question, Councilwoman, the project went through a very detailed analysis of a whole range of alternatives, and you're correct in that the report that you reviewed recommends a solution. But we went through the drill, and I'm going to go through a very summary of what we analyzed and how we came to that conclusion of the recommended system. Okay. Now, when we looked at these 8 buildings, and by the way, we went through a very extensive analysis of with and without the school, because the school being part of the system was always in question, because I'm sure, as you know, the school was examining its own wastewater system independent of a municipal system. We had conversations with them. Joe arranged a call. We did a Zoom call with Joe, the supervisor, and the school officials a number of months ago prior to any decision. And we just simply asked them to sort of hold any decisions until we were able to complete our work to determine, because we suspected there would be serious economies of scale for the school. Now, the table underneath the listing there illustrates the basis of the system design. Basically, for each building, we calculated a design flow. And this is code design flow. Now, I will mention that any wastewater system that's done by a municipality beyond an individual property is permitted by DEC, not by the health department. We have communicated with the health department and DEC in this regard, but the rules that we have to follow are DEC rules. But in this case, they're the same as the county rules.
May I interrupt you? Where do you want the questions in your presentation?
Sure, please.
You want them as we go, or you want them at the end?
No, I'm happy to have questions as we're going along.
Let's just start with this chart.
Sure.
The estimates for the youth center and the American Legion seem to me to be way off base. That's used on a really part-time basis.
Well, I understand, and we did, by the way, Joe took us and we did a site-by-site review internally. We went through all the buildings to see what they are. The youth center design basis, if you look at it, it's a real, depending, when you go into the basement, though, that's really a restaurant cafe.
We know what's there. I'm just saying how it's used, though.
Well, the way the code works is it's so many gallons per day per seat.
Okay.
So it's like 35 gallons per day per seat is is the way the design code
So you
works.
have to design it on its potentiality, not on its actual.
Exactly, exactly. So,
Good question.
yeah, that's, because at the end of the day, system has to work under the most extreme conditions.
Yeah.
So that's so this is code flow. And just for your information, average flow is typically 50% of code flow.
Mhm.
However, if you design for the average, that means half the time you're not working. So, so that's the basis of it. So you can see from that table, and that, I'm glad you pointed out, because that's really, if you look at it, that's the elephant along with the school. The rest of them are incidental. Now, so without the school, it's about 4,215 gallons per day of design flow. And the school adds another round numbers of 2,000 gallons a day. That's all based upon the number of students, number of people, students plus staff. So we basically went to their website, and this is this number of staff people they have. And that's how we came up with that flow for the school. So we examined, as you'll see in the report, there's a lot of analysis in the report looking at what's involved in doing it for 4,200 gallons a day versus 6,200 gallons a day. And that's the reason we were looking at with and without the school. But as we went through that drill and came up with the estimates, there was meetings between the town and the school committee, and the school has decided to be part of the system. So, but again, we went through the drill of with and without. Okay. So the next slide. So the next slide illustrates, let me call it the key geologic, hydrogeologic features that we have to consider. And what I'm going to do is just, if you don't mind, I'm going to go up here and talk about it. This is a groundwater elevation map of the island, and as you know, your water supply is underneath where we all are. So your groundwater is your water supply, and the maps illustrate that the study area is on the top of the watershed. So so it shows in that area, but most important, easily viewed, it's right here. It's on, and this is the spine of the watershed. When you're on the top of the watershed, what that means is that anything that gets discharged into the ground is going to be in the groundwater for a long time,
What I'm going to do is have you move to that screen
Okay.
because there's a microphone there.
Oh,
And so you'll get picked up better. I'm
Sure.
not sure if everyone can hear you.
Just,
Yes.
yeah, you can do that as well. And just put that microphone where close by you.
how's that? Is that? Okay, so what this illustrates, and these are groundwater travel time maps that were prepared by the county and USGS, which shows that the study area is on the top of the watershed. And again, top of the watershed means that it's going to be in the watershed, in the groundwater, in this case, for at least probably 50 years, okay? So if you're concerned about contaminating the groundwater, this is the worst spot to be. Just because any impacts are going to be there for a long time. This map here is one that was just published by the U.S. Geological Survey this past summer, which has been immensely valuable for the work that we've done. Excuse me. But you can see again that the site is at the top of the watershed, and and by the way, these boundary lines are not static. They change and move depending on, frankly, rainfall patterns, et cetera. What it shows here, any discharge here can frankly go in a whole number of different directions, okay? We think predominantly it goes to this watershed 183, which as I will talk about later, is really where we're proposing the discharge location. So yeah, okay, that'd be fine. I'll do that.
Yeah.
I'll do that.
Turn that back on.
And I'll use my cursor. Thank you. That's a good idea.
We're
Keep
still,
it? Oh, keep it? Okay. All right.
Yeah, so what the USGS maps show is where these boundary lines are. And again, our feeling is that it's most likely that the flow from the center of the of Shelter Island flows down to the watershed 183 and ultimately gets into Peconic Bay. Now, the other slide to the right is work that was done by the USGS, the one where my cursor is moving. And this red area is where they did mathematical modeling based upon sampling, which shows that the center of the groundwater in the center of Shelter Island is above 10 parts per million of nitrate nitrogen, which is the drinking water standard. So the data says that the groundwater in the center is really in violation of drinking water standards.
Where exactly is the center?
I'm sorry?
When you refer to the center, are you talking about the center of town? Or the center of Shelter?
Center of Shelter Island. It's basically, if you think about it, it's really the, I'm going to call it North Ferry Road from here to the IGA. This is, you know, for discussion purposes, this is the spine that we're talking about. Interestingly, North Ferry Road is right on the spine. So, what the USGS did, and, you know, we have the highest regard for their work. They're usually, you know, the highest quality. They collected data and came up with this map that says your center of the of Shelter Island here, this main area, is really overloaded with nitrate nitrogen. Now, in the report, you'll see in the appendix that we went into the actual records of the USGS and extracted it to see what the actual, you know, well data says, and there's some serious numbers there. And as well as we were looking at that data, frankly, for the work that we're doing on Fresh Park. So so the key point here with this slide is that we're in this area, the study area is an environmentally sensitive area. It's very important, if you will, for your groundwater quality, and it's contaminated. So that's the driver for why something needs to be done, okay? So there is and I'm sure you know this, because that's the reason why the project, I would presume, was started in the first place. So now what we did as part of our work was what we call a needs analysis that we did on a property by property basis. And when we use the word needs rather than problem, just to be a little more positive, if you will. And there's three types of needs that we use in our work. One of them is a functional need. And functional means that, frankly, the wastewater just doesn't go away. You don't have that issue here because you've got very forgiving sands, but in a lot of areas, there's plumbing backups and there's drain field breakouts to occur, or we didn't notice, and there's no documentation that any functional need exists. When there is a functional need, that's a public health hazard. Now, the performance need is when the wastewater system, and we're talking about cesspools here or septic systems, do not remove contaminants sufficiently. In other words, their performance is insufficient for the environment that they're in. And clearly, the key issue here is insufficient nitrogen removal. As a rule of thumb for Shelter Island type of soils and environment, one doesn't get more than 25% removal of nitrogen in the drain field. Typically, wastewater nitrogen levels from a household are in the 65 to 70 milligrams per liter range. And so you can see there is some dilution that goes on, but that's where it's coming from. The septic systems were not designed, they're not designed for nitrogen removal. So that's really the performance need is what the concern. The third type of need is when there's insufficient space. And the point with space issue is that we take the, let me call it conservative approach, that one has to be able to document that there's sufficient land on a parcel to replace the septic system when it fails. It's not a question of will it fail, it's really when it does, do you have enough room to repair it within the code requirements? So So we went through this drill, and you can see on this slide here, we went, and the key issue I should emphasize on the space for Shelter Island area is well to septic system setbacks, because by and large, everybody's relying, in this area of the island anyways, everybody's relying upon individual wells and individual septic systems. So the criteria here is you need to have a minimum distance, and I'll go over this, of X number of feet between between a well and the septic system and the well, excuse me, the septic tank and the well and the septic system. So that's what these circles represent. So the only places where a wastewater system could be installed is where there's no circles. And as you can deduce once you've really studied it, but the only parcels on which a wastewater system could be code designed and be code compliant in the center area is either on the fire department property or the two empty lots that are across the street here, if they were combined. But they have to be combined because individually they're not big enough, and they're privately owned, so the town would have to acquire them in some manner. So those, if there was going to be a system within this area, those are the only two places that meet the code separation requirements. Now, as we talked just a few minutes ago, this area is not the most desirable location,
Yeah.
even to put in.
I'm sorry to interrupt you again.
Sure, go ahead, no
I
worries.
have a problem with your circles. And this is the problem that I have. There's 3 properties that we own right in a row. We'll start with the police department, then the little rental, right? And then town hall, right in a row.
Right,
Why can't we join those, theoretically,
right.
and put a well at one end and a IA system at the other, let's just say.
Well, I mean, your point's well taken, that you could presumably, well,
thinking
first of
cost
all,
here.
you'd have to rearrange all of the wells.
Well, one. We're going to put in one well and put in one IA system to service. Theoretically, I'm asking you,
Oh, yeah.
3 properties.
Right, you could, technically, you could put one well that served all 3 properties, is that what you're getting at?
Correct.
And you
At
could
one
put
edge
in
of it.
one septic that could serve all 3 properties. Yes, that's doable.
Because I'm thinking cost. That's all. Every question I'm asking is,
I understand.
tell me about the cost.
Yeah, no, I
Okay.
understand. Yeah, and so there are ways to, and there is room on the fire department
Mhm.
property.
Yeah.
So,
For both 4,000 and 6,000 or only 4,000? That was confusing.
no, first out, and 6,000 as well.
Because you didn't draw out the 6,000.
Right,
I wasn't
now-
sure.
Right, the fire department is big enough for 6,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so it could handle the entire area. The issue, and this is let me call it a strategic issue,
Mhm.
is, yeah, that is doable. There's some, manipulation that needs to be done. But then, is this the right location for a wastewater system? Because, again, we're at the top of the watershed. Now, it's going to be cleaner and
Right.
all of those things.
Because you're taking the nitrates out. So my view is, so you're going to put in cleaner water. Doesn't that help the pollution problem or no?
Oh, it helps. Yeah. No, it helps. It helps. So that is, your point's well taken. That is a quote, another option.
Mhm.
Okay, that could be implemented. And again, the fire department would be the easy one. There's there's not much that has to be done there besides the fire department, because,
Agreeing.
they're a separate, let me call it, political entity.
I haven't.
So they would have to agree to the fire,
Yeah.
and everybody has their, possessions approach. So, that is, that's good thinking, is that is another option that could be pursued. So anyway, well, thank you for bringing that up. So that's one. We then looked at, okay, if we were to look at outside of this area, because of this, this, not only the conflicts on the separation distances, is this the best spot to be? Period. And like we showed, not really. So we looked at what would be involved in going to what we call an offsite property. So this table here just illustrates the town-owned properties and that are, and you'll see in the report, if you haven't seen already, that there's maps in there that show where town-owned properties exist, as well as where town and county-owned properties exist. We frankly stayed away from town and county-owned properties. We thought it'd be best for not to have, let me call it, ask for permission from any other political entity, because that always slows things down. So the airfield jumped out to us as a, quote, very attractive location.
Can you define surface water for me there? Make me confused me. Short time to surface water.
Short time to surface water means basically to get to Peconic Bay.
We want this going into the bay? Is that a
It's
goal?
going into the bay.
Okay.
That's where all of it
We
goes.
want that to happen quickly, not with a lot of time underground to clear. up?
No, because all of the treatment that occurs in what we call, not much, all of it occurs frankly in the drain field.
Mhm.
There is some that occurs in what we call the unsaturated zone, but before you get into groundwater.
Yeah.
But once you're in groundwater, there's no
So
further
this is-
treatment.
This is Cockles Harbor, which doesn't have a good flush, I would imagine, because the opening is so narrow.
Well, I did look at that. I mean, but for discussion purposes, it's all going there now. So we're not talking about changing.
Well, not the center. You're telling me that's 50 years, so it's going at a slower rate. No? I mean, I don't know. how to
Well,
think
if you
about
look
this.
at it in a volumetric flow.
Yeah.
What's going into the harbor today is stuff, let me say, wastewater that was discharged 50 years ago.
Right.
And the stuff, and any wastewater going into the ground here today, it'll get in the harbor within 50 years.
Different harbor, though, I would say. I'm just in terms of Cockles Harbor is very different than.
Which harbor?
Kennewick is closest to Cockles Harbor, and that's the harbor that I'm talking about. It has a very narrow inlet. It doesn't have a
Right.
frequent wash. So Gardner's Bay, pretty much, I guess you could argue it's open to the Atlantic Ocean, right? So it's a better dilution.
Yeah, no, good point, because I looked at the narrowness there and I was a little concerned about flushing.
Yeah.
However, the travel time is important for protecting the groundwater quality. Okay, so the reason why we look at that is that where any contamination that does get in by accident or whatever, we don't want to stay in the groundwater. Okay, because that's your water supply. Now, no great idea that's going to Peconic Bay, but you've got a little more buffer. If it happens in your aquifer, you're living with that for a long time. Okay, so from an environmental perspective, it's better to be closer to the bay. Now, the wastewater, for discussion purposes, is going there now. So we're not talking about adding contaminants that we're going to be reducing by probably well over 90%.
Also, BJ, I
so-
would just point out that the watershed diagrams that Gil was showing did show that most of the center waste was heading toward Cockles Harbor, not toward some other area of the bay. It's where the general flow of the eastward direction.
Yeah, I'm not following what it is.
I'm not sure I saw that. I know, is that Peter?
Yes,
Peter
Peter
Grant.
Grant.
Yeah, again,
I'm
I
not sure.
believe if I have my locations correct, I'm geographically challenged, but
I'm not sure I saw that, Peter. I feel like I saw most of
the
it going. towards the
183
Gardner.
is not where 183
I mean,
is
they
where
even said Long Island Sound estuary, which is kind of doesn't exist, but.
Well, let's look at this figure here. Let's look at this figure, just so we don't get confused.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, let's look at this figure. The wastewater's in 183. That's the bay you're talking about, as I understand, right?
Right.
Okay. The wastewater's going there now.
Mhm.
The site we're talking about is going to the same bay.
Okay.
So we're not adding any contamination to that bay. On the contrary, we're reducing the contamination. The water's going there. That airfield location just means it's going to get to the bay faster.
Okay.
That's all.
You know,
I always thought
one of the things we could keep in mind about the flushing of Cockles Harbor, by the way, when the
Yeah.
Army Corps of Engineers come in and do their study about Real Point,
Yeah.
Real Point, to the best of my knowledge, if you take a look at the pictures 40, 50, and 60 years ago, the spit has gone further and further south. So that it's now elongated, where it used to be 1,600 feet, it's now 2,000 feet. Same thing is true on the south side of the opening of the harbor, that the sand is built up there, so it has narrowed the opening. That's a simple fix. In terms of dredging, you could open up and get a much better flow and a flush into Cockles Harbor with proper dredging and with proper maintenance of that dredge. So I think I'm anxious to see when the Army Corps comes in there, that to be addressed, because obviously Cockles Harbor has the best eelgrass, has the best shellfishing, it's still considered by Peconic Estuary standards the best of the best because it's the furthest east in the Peconics. So it does it's cooler by 5 degrees compared to the western part of the Peconics, and it does flush decently. Could it flush better? The answer is yes, and it's a simple fix to be able to do that.
As well as if let me say not you, but if the area is not experiencing algae problems,
Right.
water quality problems, what we're proposing here is just going to make it better. Now, regardless of the location, whether the location is at the airfield or even in the center here, the impact on the bay is the same.
Right.
Now,
I just have a
I'm
question
referring
about
to
that.
table 1.1-3,
Yeah.
just so you know, it does list the other estuaries as receiving our wastewater. Go ahead.
And
From the center here.
my question is, I was always under the impression that with the way, the push for IA systems at the county and state level is they were more concerned about the periphery of the island, like cleaning up the IA, the nitrates there, because the longer it takes for the travel time, I thought there was some cleaning of the nitrates as it traveled through the aquifer and through the sand and everything.
Yeah, but that's kind of a fallacy a little bit, Amber, because the year-round residents, the history of the year-round residents is in the center of the island. If you go to a place like Silver Beach and you go back to what it looks like down in here in Silver Beach area, there's no red, yellows in this area. It's all blue and green. So there's not a nitrate problem.
Right.
There's a salt
Yeah, I know,
intrusion
and
problem.
we, for our IA grants, we've been focused on the center of town
Right.
because of the high nitrates for people
Right.
and less so for the periphery because not as much nitrates was getting into the bays. So I guess if you could come up to the mic.
A different way of asking the same question, because it is somewhat of an engineering feat to move the discharge from the center all the way over to the airfield. In your words, or in your analysis, what is the advantages that we derive from doing that?
well, the advantage of moving the discharge from the center to that area is predominantly to get it in a location where the travel time, where the impact on the aquifers diminish. And because we're going to talk about nitrogen is obviously a major concern, but we would also say, there's other stuff to be concerned about. And PFOA and emergent contaminants are other ones. So if you have the ability to move the effluent to a location where it's not going to negatively impact or potentially negatively impact your aquifer, we would urge to do that. That's really that's the engineering analysis. So did I answer your question?
I think we're shifting a problem. Sorry.
Sorry.
Just
I could run back and forth.
Yeah.
I guess I would ask at some point in layman's terms that you quantify that advantage.
Well, we're happy to do that. I mean, quantitatively, we're reducing nitrogen levels over 95%. That's one thing. Okay,
At the point of discharge.
Which you could do here or you could do there.
that's correct.
Sure.
That's
Okay.
correct. In terms of the big advantage about doing it here versus at the airfield is that we're not in the area where it's going to be in the groundwater for 50 years versus 5 years. That's the big difference. Okay, now,
So it's up, I don't want to present this argumentatively, but
No,
if
no.
we already have a 50-year timeline on cleaning the aquifer
what do you mean 50-year timeline to clean?
for it to dissipate. In other words, I inferred from something that you said that it takes 50 years for it to travel.
That's correct.
So that 50 years is from the point of discharge to at the top of the watershed to the.
So could one
to the actual
infer
water body.
that it also takes 50 years for the nitrates to flush?
In
out of the
between
wa-
those, in between those 2 points is a lot of individual wells that people are drawing drinking water from.
Right.
So we're moving it on the other side of those wells. It's not going to take 50 years to flush past the wells. It takes 50 years to go all the way to the water.
So
Yeah,
it
it
progressively
shouldn't
gets
be
better.
controversial that you don't want to contaminate upstream of your drinking water. That should not be controversial or difficult to understand.
No, we're not talking about that. Tom.
No, but
Well,
so
yes, you're talking about whether you're going to be putting discharge upstream or downstream.
But this
That's
is
your choice.
relatively clean discharge.
Well, the only thing, let's try to do one thing at a time.
Right.
Okay. First of all, so technically, one, you could have and we're agnostic on the solution. You know, we're just advising you about the options. And the locating it in the center of town versus at the airfield, the advantages of the airfield is that the influence on downgrading wells, which is removed. Okay, now we're solving the nitrogen problem, but we don't want to be, let me say, having a blind eye to other issues in wastewater that are, let me say, emerging, as the terminology is used. And those emerging issues are PFOAs and other contaminants, drugs.
But do we have PFOAs on shelter? On just to interrupt,
Excuse me?
is that an issue we would worry about here? PFOAs? I know
PFOAs are
pharmaceuticals
They're everywhere.
in any
Yeah,
kind
they're
of
ev-
quantity here.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
It's
And the
on your-
USGS is doing a study of that.
Right, it's on your
I'm
clothes.
thinking, like Grumman.
No,
No,
yeah,
I
you're
mean,
thinking of-
yeah.
No, it's in your clothing, it's in your Teflon.
Mhm.
So I hate to say, but it's, when we measure it in some other projects,
Mhm.
it's over drinking water standards.
As a point of clarification, Joe, when you presented yesterday over at school, you talked about what was being sent down to the airfield was basically the liquids. The solids are going to remain. The solids are going to be pumped out. The liquids are going down there. My question to you is, even with the liquids that go down to the airfield, is it possible to treat those liquids down at the airfield before we put that back in the ground?
Joe?
That's exactly what's happening. So did you hear that? You guys would. So it is being treated before it goes back into the ground. The liquids are being treated at the airfield.
Right.
So we haven't gone that far in the presentation yet to actually see that. The solids are still being pumped out here at the center of the island. So
Mhm.
what we're putting back in the ground down at the airfield is not anywhere resembling what we put into the
Amber?
ground now with these antiquated systems.
Amber, can I make a suggestion?
Yes.
Can we try to get through the presentation and people make notes for their questions? Because I don't think we're going to get anywhere if we keep going back and
Right,
forth.
right.
Okay.
Okay,
Yep.
great, thank you.
Okay, thank
So any event, but good thinking that you could do something in the center of town, like we identified at the fire department. So those are the trade-offs. The airfield was the identified location that had a lot of attractive features from environmental perspective. And then let's just get into the engineering if that option were to be implemented. So for the existing buildings that we're talking about in the center of town, the topography is such that they can all drain by gravity to a pump station at the library. And I'm sure you know the topography of the area. On the driveway at the library, there's the low spot. So everything could drain to that spot. And then a pump station would be installed. And then it would go to the treatment site wherever is decided that treatment and disposal site to be. Okay, so that's the engineering of it. Now, this next slide illustrates if we were to go to the airfield for treatment and disposal, we're proposing that the route, and there's a number of different options that we looked at, but the one that appears to make the most sense is to basically go down North Ferry Road all the way to the IGA, take a right there. I always pronounce that road wrong, but Mangwagnon Road, and then take a right onto St. Mary's, and then a left onto Burns, and then we're at the airfield. That line from the pump station to the airfield is a pressure line. So we're talking about 2 to 3 inch pressure line that would go that route. Now, so that's the plan if we were to go to the airfield. And then this slide here just illustrates how the wastewater would be treated. And like Councilman Culligan there's mentioned, we're talking about septic tanks on the individual properties, effluent flowing from the individual property, either by gravity or pressure, depending on the topography, and then going to the treatment location. And we illustrate, that's an example of what the treatment system would look like. That's a site that we engineered a number of years ago over in Hampton Bays in Southampton. That is about 2 times the size of what is needed for Shelter Island. And that's a description of the treatment system. Now, we recommend that treatment system. We've used it quite a bit. The a significant advantage of it is that it's very low operation maintenance. It's basically on automatic. For the facility of this size for Shelter Island, we would expect the operator only needs to be there at most 1 day a week, and possibly less. It's all pretty well automated. Other technologies, which are referred to as activated sludge, do require more frequent operation and maintenance costs. The operator cost is usually the biggest, as well as aeration or compressors, et cetera. This type of system is very low energy. It's really just using pumps to move water around. So that's the reason why we have used this technology in a number of locations. And we've used this now for over 20 years. And we've installed a handful of these throughout Long Island. Okay, now we're looking for this approach. We're looking at, this next slide talks about what the cost would be. So we propose a capital cost, which is all costs, construction and engineering and all administrative and legal costs at $3.8 million. The annual O&M is estimated at $79,000 for the flow of the 6,200. We are very confident these numbers are very conservative. We would not be surprised if the capital cost could come in under $3 million, but we don't want to propose that. We want to make sure that ideally any grants that the town can get will cover a significant portion. And then the lower portion of that table just makes assumptions on the grants that may be able to be procured to reduce the local share and what the resulting local share would be for whether a bond on the local share was done over 20 or 30 years. And obviously in today's interest environment, 2% interest for municipal bonds is readily achievable. So those are, and the key thing obviously here is to maximize the amount of grants that the town could get. And in my opinion, the town would be in a very advantageous position to get grants because obviously you're a municipality and you're dealing with a water quality, drinking water problem, and those go right to the top in terms of getting grants. And obviously with infrastructure funding, et cetera, this is probably one of the better times in the last 10 years to get grants, the best. So, you're in an enviable position because you already have a grant, not only for the study, but for the design. So you could become shovel ready pretty quick. And that's really where the money's going to go, is the shovel ready projects. So I believe that's really our, and here's the detail on our cost estimate. And I'll share with you these unit prices. The quantities are the quantities; those are measurable. The real challenge in doing estimates is what's the unit cost, and we are very comfortable with these numbers. They're, if anything, they're on the high side, and again, our feeling is that don't be surprised if this project is what you adopt, the total price could come in under 3. But the key thing is also going to be what on the own operation maintenance costs is keeping those costs low. So that's our presentation, and this is a good time to open it up. And I like the idea of there is an option you could do in the center. It's a strategic decision on which way you want to go, more than a technical issue, because both of them are doable. You can do either or, and clearly doing it in the center is going to be less costly. But there's risk associated with impact that may have on the aquifer.
Kind of build on that last comment in terms of the center being less costly. Could you give us kind of a general read on how much cost is being contained in the component that moves the water from the wastewater from the center of town to the airfield?
Yeah, Gary, you want to run through it, and we can. Yeah, we'll look at those numbers, but
Let me build on that question, because essentially we have a two-component problem. We have a drinking water problem, and looking at it from the standpoint of just fresh water.
Right.
And we also have the sewer problem.
Right.
And I guess my question would be, and we also are, just by looking at the hardware within your engineered solution, a lot of it is piping liquid from one place to another.
Right.
So I guess the obvious question is there a design solution which leaves the effluent where it's currently being discharged, following the same path that it has followed historically, and take the differential in cost and use that to augment the freshwater wells that exist in this area? And by that, I mean a well, a common well that could support the center. And as far as we can conceivably go with that, and in that case, if the well is located offsite in a more desirable area in terms of water table, can you comment about the water quality that would be generated by those two different engineering solutions? So in one case, we're taking the effluent from here and we're moving it to another location. In the alternative scheme, we're keeping the effluent where it's always been and letting it travel where it has always traveled throughout the island. And we're cherry picking an ideal location for us to bring water in to this location. And we're using all of that piping and all of the components of it in terms of pressurization of the main, and using that on the freshwater supply. Can you comment? It's hard to put you in a position after spending hours and hours of engineering in a different direction to weigh that alternative. But
no, I understand your thinking, and it makes good sense. It's right. Let me see if I can paraphrase it just so we're make sure we're on the same page. You're talking about, okay, having the wastewater system a la has been suggested or at the fire department. And then adding to that let me call it a community water supply system that serves the same buildings. Is that what you're saying? That's what I thought you said.
For the purpose of illustration, yes. I mean, ultimately, I'd like it to do more, but yes, as you said, to serve the same buildings.
Right, so you're just saying, hey, instead of, if the concern is the drinking water, yeah, I mean, that's doable. I mean, it's, now, and let's start with, if you did something only in the center of town, it's gonna be under $2 million. Okay, so just for reference purposes. Now, probably between 1 and 2 somewhere, right? When we start looking at it in detail. But that run adds $1 million, just the force main on the road. So there's a money, this project is only for wastewater. So that we do have let me call it jurisdictional issue there, but that's doable. There's nothing, but you're talking about a community water supply system and then a community wastewater system centered here in this area.
So two parts of the question is I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Do we solve the freshwater supply side with $1 million? Is that doable for the buildings that are under consideration? And the second, that's one question. And the second part is there conceptually, I see but I'm not an engineer.
Yeah, that's all right.
Is there a qualitative from an improvement from an engineering standpoint in one approach versus the other? And
Well, the issue that you have to be, let me call it, sensitive to on the water supply is once you start getting into being a community water supply, you're in a whole different business. Because now you have all sorts of state and federal regulations that have to be adhered to. So it's not that it's not doable, it's done all the time, but you now have a lot of regulatory requirements. You're gonna have to be doing a lot of tests. So what you're proposing.
I just have one comment because I didn't want that to have too undue weight in the context of Shelter Island. The municipal water business per se is something that we've already put our foot in the water. And it's something we're already doing with regard to the West Neck Water District. It would not be a new condition for us to be.
Well, let me make a suggestion. Let's leave it, because we don't have to only say, go down this road too much. The short answer to your question is, yeah, that's doable. That you could have a wastewater system that's centered in the center of town and a water supply system that serves those buildings as well. Yeah. It's
Hey,
technically
Pio,
doable.
if I could step in for a minute, I think the intent of this study going forward was a long-term solution for water quality. And I think that's why we're looking at all these alternatives. If we went with something in the center of town, I think it's going to be a lot harder with these individual type systems for certain buildings. I think in the long run, it's going to be a lot harder to address future problems with PFAS or pharmaceuticals or other things. Whereas I'm assuming when you get into your presentation a little more, you're going to show that if and when we had to, we can expand our filtration.
Right. That was one of the obviously advantages of the airfield is that it's expandable. Right. And if there was any need or interest in doing that, you have that capacity. Whereas anything you do in the center of town is you're not going to have you've got virtually no elbow room. So it's going to be constrained.
Those are the two things that came up and were abundantly clear yesterday that when Joe presented to the school, is the flexibility that you have at the airstrip because it's a large area, it's a large strip of land. The other thing about low density housing down there, it doesn't compare to the density level of what you have up here in town, in the center of town. So those two factors were major considerations that we looked at. Joe, do you have anything based on what you've just heard? Do you have anything you want to weigh in on as far as this is concerned? Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna
I'd like
say,
to
you
hear
have
from
more
you.
of your
Yeah.
presentation.
Oh,
No,
let me
no, I
back
mean,
it
that's
up.
the summary of it,
Okay,
rather than getting
okay.
into, but that's, you know, we can get into a lot more, but that gives you the big picture in terms of what we looked at. Now, you know, there's a lot more in the reports. For instance, we looked at the whole range of technologies and, you know, we hopefully made it clear why we proposed this versus the others.
I would have liked to have seen a cost comparison. Sorry, Meg.
You're okay.
Go ahead. You-
So with this proposal of pumping the wastewater out of the center of town and to the airfield, you're reducing the possible recharge of the area by 1 to 2 million gallons. Do you have a proposal that would help recharge this area since you're now taking this water and moving it, reducing the overall quantity in the center of town for the aquifer? Because if we can recharge this with fresh water, that will also help with the concentration that we currently have.
Right.
So that's something that I'd like to consider. That's a significant loss to the area as far as recharge goes.
Right.
With the airfield location, I don't know if you've had a chance to look at soil conditions there. They're quite poor. There's a significant amount of clay and mica. I know we've done jobs in the area where we've had to go down 60 feet before we hit something sandy. So that's a consideration. What else did I have on here? Does your system treat for PFAS and PFAS, since that's something you keep talking about, and pharmaceuticals?
All right, let's deal with one at a time. I mean, those are all good comments. In our opinion, the amount of water that we're talking about, moving it from the top of the watershed, you know, we're talking, again, in this case, on the average, 3,000 gallons a day. We would suggest that that's de minimis. That's not, it's going to be lost in the
800,000 gallons a year is approximately what that would be.
3,000, it's 100 million gallons a year.
Yeah.
And the volumetric flow that moves through the aquifer, that's a very small number. So the 3,000 gallons a day. I didn't look at it for this aquifer. We did look at it for some others, but again, we'll document that, but we would expect it to be, you know, inconsequential. The soils, we have not done any soil boring, so that's a good point. However, we did look at the soils maps, and it all suggests that area is very good. So, but confirmatory.
Test holes in that area usually come back problematic,
Okay.
just
Okay.
from my
Well,
experience.
yeah, and so, you know, that would need to be done for confirmatory purposes. And we just did some over in Fresh Pond today, so we understand, because, you know, it's not over until it's over, so we would dot that I once we get, obviously, that's not a hard thing to get there. Your third point was on, I think, the PFAS and the pharmaceuticals and all. The system has the ability to add that if needed or desired. So we do it. The treatment technique that's used is basically what's called advanced oxidation treatment systems. And it's what we would look at. It's the combination of UV and hydrogen peroxide. And those are very effective for getting rid of the contaminants.
Right.
In that regard. Now, that can be done up here as well. So it's.
Right.
Yeah.
And then just a comment on your assumed ground flow. You wouldn't know this, but there actually used to be a river that went from the center of town down to Manana Creek and also over towards Sachem's Woods. That has hence been covered up, but that affects groundwater flow. So when you look at the nitrate chart, you'll see that there's a higher concentration flowing towards Manana Creek. And I believe it's using that old riverbed as part of its travel. So that, and then towards Sachem's, which is why I think the numbers at Bowditch and North Midway tend to be higher. I think that's something to consider as well. So being at the peak of all the watersheds, you're going to get flow into all the watersheds, some more than others.
Right. Excellent. Thank you, Evan. That's good to know. Thanks.
Howard?
Excuse me, just for our education, if you could ask people just identify themselves and if they
Yes.
represent anybody, just so we know
Yes, sorry.
context.
Yes.
Yes, I'm Howard Johansson. I'm on the Conservation Advisory Council
Okay.
for the town. My question is, was there a request for proposal sent out by the town? And what did that say? I'm going all over the place here, from water to septics. I'm really quite confused. So was the town?
Well, the town did issue an RFP
Yes.
for the wastewater project a number, Joe, was a year or two ago.
Mhm.
And it was competitively, we were competitively procured. And the focus is on the wastewater project. The scope of work is just the wastewater. This gentleman brought up, hey, can you mix and match and do this and that? So, but the scope of the work is on a wastewater project.
It is on the way. Okay, thank you, because.
Patrick?
Yeah. wait till Patrick.
Just, it's a question in terms
Identify
of,
You got to identify yourself. And
oh,
who
yes,
you
I'm
represent.
Pat Clifford. I'm the president of the Hay Beach Property Owners Association. And I was following your map. I think I got it right. If you go down to the IGA and then you go to the airfield, Sylvester Manor is to your left, where there's a project beginning to be worked on and thought about in the future.
Yes.
And if you go a little bit further, you get to Gardeners Bay Country Club. And there's a big project that's being considered that's been put off for a while. So you find yourself looking at 4 or 5 major projects that are currently underway. And that would include probably not the Pridwin because that's far enough away. But when you look at all of the projects together, you have the issue of, has a hydrologist taken a look at the overall aquifer in terms of the flow that's going on now? Because nitrates, for instance, I was enjoying looking at the map you had up here before. There was another study done earlier than that one that had the center of the nitrates was right in the middle of where Gardeners Bay Country Club is. And there have been other well problems that have been in that area. So the question is, when you do one project like this, are we required as a town to get, we talked about getting a water czar, getting a hydrologist to take a look at the overall aquifer and all of the projects at once and say how much water, for instance, are we going to be using above and beyond what we have now? If there's nitrates, we know already. You said there's nitrates from the center, and I think addressing the center is a good idea. I think the project's a good idea, but trying to relate it to the other areas where we know we have some problems and we know we're talking about expansion. And kind of take would it make sense to have a study like that done by the town just to say overall, what's the flow? For instance, Gardeners Bay is the biggest user of water. They're putting a new irrigation system in. All the things that you put on the lawn go into the ground, right? They already have nitrate problems, but I know when you come in, I know more about this stuff now than I ever thought I would, which is only a little bit. When you really look at some of the studies, you realize, sure, there are ways of taking care of that as long as you think about it in advance. Now, I know that there's a bunch of these projects that I'm reasonably familiar with, and I find myself asking the question overall, is it worth having, and probably that's part of what the town wants to do when they say getting a water czar, having a hydrologist take a look at the overall aquifer as we're going forward. The center makes sense. I mean, everybody agrees the place needed a total overhaul. And some of these other things are projects that may or may not make sense, but they're relatively big projects, not little projects. And it's a question.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. First of all, we have looked at the hydrology issues for this, we've got a hydrologist that.
No, I heard you mention it. That's what triggered it in my.
Yeah. So we've looked at it. Again, the flows that we're looking at here are pretty small. So now.
Ones I was talking about are relatively big by comparison.
Yeah, I know. Those projects I would expect would be required to do, environmental impacts analysis, at least for SECRA, to determine if there is a likely impact.
But from your own professional viewpoint, would you do them one at a time or take the time now? I mean, get this one going, but take the time to look at the others as they come along, trying to look ahead. When the aquifers, there's only one aquifer,
Oh, I got it.
and it's
Okay.
our aquifer.
Well, no, you're raising a good point. The challenge is, many of these projects I would expect are, some of them may be a gleam in the eye versus some of them are real or not. So,
Most of them are at least real in that, in terms of they would like to have them, they could afford to do them. The question is, can the aquifer support it?
well, my professional opinion is that there's ways to engineer these things so that the impacts on the aquifers can be diminished. And the simplest answer is you got to reuse the water. You can't consumptively use the water. So so that you then look at the net impact of a project. And, for instance, we did a project in Hampton Bays. From a nitrogen perspective, it has zero impact. Frankly, it has a positive impact. So, so there's ways to engineer these projects so that they are environmentally, let me call it, benign. So that's what you would want to do. When you look at them, let me say townwide, you're going to run into the challenge of, what's the design criteria? What are you proposing to do? When in fact, I would look at them individually first and make them do the maximum that's reasonable so that the net impact would be, let me call it.
So you can estimate what the maximum might be in advance for the other projects. If you
Yeah, I
had a
don't-
hydrologist do it.
Yeah, I mean, one can always do it. I question whether it's, it sometimes raises more questions. But when a project moves to the point of getting close to implementation, that's when the tire hits the road. And that's when you want to decide, and you may have,
Because it's
One of the
all-
things, Pat, I would like to say is the schools here, and I listened to Mr. Dunning yesterday about, we're expanding this conversation all over the island. They're at a critical time right now where it's put up or shut up.
No,
you know,
I
with the
understand that,
school.
and I'm actually not that it matters, but I'm in favor of doing the project for the center.
Yeah, so that's something that the town board feels very strongly.
No,
Of
I-
all the 4 feasibility studies we have, I think that the capital planning, which I'm the chairman of, and grants committee, identified this particular project as by far the number one problem. Of focus
I
that we're
would
going
agree
to
with
concentrate
that.
on.
I would,
Cleaning up the nitrogen problem in the center of town. All these other things that are going to come on are key things and the things to think about. And whether the town board decides to get a water czar or something like, that's something down the road that we have to really think about. Because we are concerned about the potential of other things happening. Right now, I think the focus has to be here on the center of town, cleaning up this nitrogen issue to the best of our ability. Whether we pipe it down to the airfield or we take care of it in the center of town. I think that's where the discussion needs to stay today.
So let's just jump back here to the town board for a little while, if you all don't
Right.
mind, because it's our work session.
right?
Sorry.
You are the boss.
Well, yeah, I'd like to think so.
She's only been here 2 weeks and she's taken over. I just want to go on record as saying that.
Well, I'm coming back to the cost. I just have to come back to the cost. So we're going to save $1 million if we don't pipe it there. We do this Nitrex system at the firehouse. But why have we left so quickly the idea of IAs? Either little groups of IAs or I understand, I saw your circles, I get it. But I do think there's I have an IA system and I'm within 75 feet of my well because that was the only place to put it. And it was an improvement over what was there. So, this operating cost, the big cost is big cost, but the operating cost of 80 grand a year, it takes my breath away. Oh, how does that compare to something else, anything else that can cure the nitrogen problem?
I guess the question becomes then, what is the difference in output? In other words, what do we get better for the full system as opposed to the IA system as far as the water purity, et cetera?
Well,
I'm sort of stuck on the cost too.
In
Cost.
terms of, I would suggest to you that when you're looking at in town versus the airfield, it's simply a matter of location.
Yeah.
And it's a strategic decision, and there's a cost factor.
Yeah.
Right.
You can, and that's really it. I would strip it down to, you don't get it. It's not complicated.
Right.
It's really, it's a strategic decision. Obviously, there's a route that's going down there that there's others that could
Yeah.
connect if, in the future, if it was deemed necessary. But there's strategic, it's a
I get-
strategic
But for
decision.
me to make a strategic decision, I have to have a cost. I
You
can't,
have a
I mean,
cost.
but I have a cost. That's a
B-
cost
B-
without context is no information at all.
BJ, if I could, again, if I could step in, to do individual IA systems is a quick fix. It's not taking care of the total package going down the road, pharmaceuticals, PFAS, those things. The other piece to the puzzle is this is addressing all the municipal entities in the center of town. The school is looking to do it on their own for a package of anywhere from $800 to $1 million, plus anywhere from $50,000 to $60,000 a year in maintenance. Now it's all taxpayer money. They could have done their own project and we could have done ours, but if we can do one project that's gonna, number one, because of, the efficiency of a bigger project, save the taxpayers money, but even more important than that is be a much more efficient way to do it in the long run. I think that's what we need to look at. Again, and this is when Joe and I
Jerry,
first met with the school, we were pushing the big picture. The down the road, let's not be penny wise and dollar foolish.
I understand that, and I see that. I'm not arguing with the wisdom there. But what I'm saying is I can't gauge how wise this is without at least some hard numbers. And I think you can come up with them. You can
Oh,
drum them
yeah,
up.
yeah, it's not.
You know, I don't think I'm asking a lot.
Wait, no, consider it done. I mean,
Yeah.
We've already given you that says, if you were to do
Yeah.
something in the center of town, it's gonna be under $2 million.
But that's the nitrate system. Aren't there other things we can look at? I get it with I get that we're prepping for a PFAS pharmaceutical deluge
The issue here
in the
that
future. But if I don't want to do that because it's too expensive, how do I gauge that?
here's the issue that you need to deal, the town needs to deal with, okay? Whether you're gonna get, a requirement is to get under 10
Yes.
or whether you're not. The IA systems are not required to get under 10. The IA systems are required to get under 19. Whether they do or not is another thing, okay? In this application, you're gonna run into trouble,
Mhm.
okay? Because the strength of the wastewater is very high.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
Well, the nitrogen level is very high. It's going to be about 150.
Mhm.
And a conventional, the IA systems that are currently on the market, these are commercial applications. These are not a residential application.
No, I thought there were commercial
Okay.
IA systems.
What's this?
Thought there were commercial IA systems?
I understand there are. That's not the point. The point is that in a commercial application, for instance, and I'll be candid.
Yeah.
The proposal for the school that was as the supervisor just noted, that was the first application of that technology or proposed application of that technology for that type of application. We're not talking about being the first rodeo,
Mhm.
okay? And we're guaranteeing the performance,
Mhm.
okay?
Mhm.
So, and we're saying you got to be under 10.
Mhm.
Now, these other folks don't have to be under 10. Now we're comparing apples and oranges.
Mhm.
And or I like to be a wise guy and say, we're comparing a Yugo with a Maserati.
Mhm.
So which one do you want? Now we're talking water supply. So those are the strategic decisions that you're dealt with. Now, could you do IA technologies here and put them in at a relatively low cost? Yes. Is it going to solve the problem? I'm not going to guarantee that. To a degree.
There's no commercial IA on Nantucket?
We do commercial IAs all the time.
Oh, okay. So there is a proven technology.
There is
I'm sorry, God, I missed a step.
the IA technologies that are approved under the county program
Right.
are predominantly for residential applications.
Suffolk County specific.
Right.
Okay.
Now, the other piece of the puzzle is when you go over 1,000 gallons a day,
Mhm.
the requirement is that you have to get total nitrogen under 10.
Mhm.
That's a code requirement.
Right.
Okay? I'd like you to tell me who's going to give you that guarantee that you're going to get under 10.
Right.
Okay? We don't know it. We do.
You guarantee, yeah.
We do guarantee. We don't know anybody else that does.
Mhm.
Okay, we use that as a differentiator.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
So, so So that's the challenge. When you say IA technologies, you're really referring to the residential technologies that are used, and some of them work fine, and they're fine.
Mhm.
Whether they're good enough is another question. My professional opinion in certain areas, they're not good enough.
Mhm.
In addition to that, the commercial systems you're talking about are just sized for larger flows. They're not any better.
Yeah.
And they're certainly not equipped to handle the high nitrogen concentrations that you see in non-residential applications.
Mhm.
As an example,
Have we not reached a point where we can get Joe up? He's a town engineer. He's a person that's been on this for a long period of time, is intimately involved in this, and I'd love to hear some of Joe's thoughts. You know, we could carry this conversation on indefinitely.
One quick question, P.O. is, would it be possible to do a comparative CBA, cost benefits analysis of where you list what the price of the IA system is and what the, you know, and what the, what that will get us down to? Same thing with the current systems. And so that people.
Remember,
get an idea
if
of
we're
what the
talking, if you
different
remember the
are.
table,
Mm.
remember the table
Mm.
on the flows, okay? You're gonna, any application that you're thinking about is going to be over 1,000 gallons a day in terms of design. flow.
Mhm.
By code, the system has to get under 10,
Mhm.
okay? So, and there's no technology that's approved under the county program that gets under 10. Under the IA residential application.
Mhm.
Now, anything over 1,000 gallons a day is permitted under the Appendix A technology of the county code. Now, we have gotten that approval from it. And frankly, our technology is down to 3. That's what we usually get. Okay, so we would have to go to these technologies and say, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to get under 10? Well, I know the literature. They don't get there now.
Mhm.
So now I got to go, no, I ain't doing it. No,
Mhm.
you want something that you know is going to work.
Mhm. Mhm.
So as well as when you get into commercial applications like we're talking about here, there is you may have heard technologies where they didn't work and they had to feed them dog food.
I don't understand.
That's not unusual.
remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, not unusual. You're going to have that problem with these, if you really are concerned about nitrogen removal. They're not going to remove the nitrogen. Now, we engineer them so they do. You frankly, there's ways to deal with it. But you've heard this, Councilwoman, that there's systems that have been installed and they don't have enough what's called food for the bacteria to grow, so they put dog food in.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now,
Mhm.
that's not the smartest way to do it.
Mhm.
So, so what we're proposing here in the technology is a rock solid, gold standard, if you will. You're in your water supply. We would not recommend anything different. We
Yeah.
got no financial benefit by doing that. Okay. Our benefit is on engineering fees. That's what we get paid for. We just get paid for engineering fees.
Oh, okay. So that clears up another question.
Yeah, there's no, we
You
don't get.
develop the system, but you don't get a residual or some.
Not, we've issued statements to municipalities that, conflict of interest, that basically says, and whenever we do municipal work, our fees are only for engineering services. We don't charge any royalties. Okay? And then if any community is ever concerned, we say, get a peer review.
Right.
If you want, get a second.
So
opinion.
when we put out the money to actually physically buy the things that go into
That's up to public bid.
creating the system, it's on public. bid. Okay.
So now, and we've done this before in many locations for public entities. So, you're talking, I would urge you not to worry, not to think about the technologies. I mean, our professional opinion, the one we're proposing is the way to go. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, location is a different story.
Hmm.
Okay?
Mhm.
And location, we think it's wiser to go there from a long-term perspective, but we're not the decision. We're making recommendations.
Do the operating costs decrease if we keep it up here?
Excuse me?
No, there's a minimal amount of power. The pumping power that you need to move the water over there is a very small fraction of the O&M costs. As Pio was saying, the primary costs are the operator.
And by the way, that's 79 per year, 79,000 per year. Don't be surprised if it's half that.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
we're putting numbers in there to be safe.
Mm.
Okay,
Mm.
and if you look at the detail, we'll show you the detail. Most of it's labor. Now, as an example of the county's faith in our system, they typically require daily visits from the operator. There's nothing to do.
Hmm.
Now, they've allowed on our system that you only have to be there twice a week.
Mhm.
And we expect it to go to once a week.
Mhm.
And on other places, it's once a month.
Mhm.
So that's where the savings, see, so, we have to walk a fine line between what we think it's gonna be and then, let me say, covering to make sure we don't have to go back to the well and see what
Right.
you said.
Yeah.
But we would expect that you're gonna see some pretty significant savings. We think strategically it's appropriate to the airfield for environmental as well as service areas, it could help your commercial area.
Mhm.
There might be something of desirable. There's a cost with it. There's no question about it. But, get the grants, you're in a sweet spot in terms of getting grants. So.
I have a quick question. Could you, since there are other areas in this triangle in the center that would need to reduce nitrogen, is this system expandable, or would others, how would you deal with if the town wanted to add other areas to this system? What happens then?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. It's easily addressed. And the system, think of it as very modular, and just expanding the modules is no big deal. And frankly, we've engineered big systems this way. We did a 900,000 gallon a day system years ago that was in smaller modules, and they were built as the need occurred. So, and that, frankly, that's the nice thing about the airfield. We got a lot of elbow room.
Right. I do have one other question about the airfield, though. There's like a sort of a low spot wetlands area there and across the street.
I noticed it.
Impact? I mean, I know you're telling me it's coming out clean. I get it, but I just want to know from your,
Well, that wetland there, I was looking at it.
yeah.
Frankly, there's water there.
Right.
That's why.
Right.
And you notice it ends right at the road. So
Yeah.
that's
Well-
one of the things that frankly, we got to look at the site is what's the depth of groundwater.
I think it goes across, I mean, I think it's across the street is that Nichols property way back there?
Yeah, it's across,
Yeah, back there, right?
yeah, it's across the street.
Yeah.
You drive right over it. I noticed that when we're driving right by
I
it.
just want to make sure we're thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, the key issue, to the lady's point about, we got to do a drilling there. Know where the soils are like, and we got to have depth of groundwater.
Right.
Now, we do have other options because, there's a fair amount of land there
Mm,
with topo.
yeah.
So, so it seems like it shouldn't be a problem, we shouldn't have a problem finding the proper spot.
So-
We're used to working in mountainous areas where we deal with clay and rock.
Jumping in.
So just to add on to my question, would you then need to add more pumping stations? Or would you, how would that
Yeah, no,
work?
good question. I'm glad you asked. No, it's not an issue. I mean, that's the short answer is, yeah, you just had a pump station because the system is what we would call low pressure sewer. So you would add either individual pumps or you would have people that would drain to a new pump station or the one that's proposed at the library.
Is there a potential cost savings for new users coming on board as opposed to them doing individual systems?
Could you repeat the question?
Yeah, and identify yourself too, Peter, please.
So, sorry, Peter Grand, Chair of the Water Advisory Committee. I'm just wondering, you were describing the system as modular, so we're talking about the potential for future expansion. I'm wondering if in doing a cost benefit analysis, there is a benefit that it would be less expensive to resolve issues in those additional areas that you add on and take advantage of the infrastructure you've already created, as opposed to those particular buildings or homes having to put in individualized advanced septic systems.
Yeah, no, good. The short answer is that the marginal cost to add buildings will be low because, as you're pointing out, Peter, the the major components would be installed as part of the project. In other words, the piping. So the only thing that would need to be added, we would expect the pipe's going to be big enough. We can't imagine that you're going to add that much flow. So the key thing is just adding to the treatment system. Now, so now all of a sudden, that's all it's going to cost in so your marginal cost then goes low. So
To
again,
answer his question directly, I think he was asking to compare the cost of an individual IA system to connecting to this existing system.
Yeah.
So that would be a case by case basis. I mean, do you need another pump station? Can you pump directly into the force main? It's hard to determine that right now, but also you're comparing apples to oranges on the individual system to the
yeah,
to the
Right,
centralized
what did
system.
they do? Mhm.
Michael?
It's Michael Shatkin. The one comment that I did want to make with regard to expansion is thinking about the future growth of the island and smart growth. One might think that an area that is ripe for some form of additional development is the center. If you drive around the center, you see a fair amount of vacant property. It's also an area which in one way is already developed, but the development is sort of in some ways arrested. It just hasn't flourished in the way that it should. So I would commend the project in terms of adding infrastructure to the center and anticipate from a master plan standpoint, or I should use the word comprehensive standpoint, what the future looks like and make the system expandable to accommodate growth. And again, that goes back to one of the precedents that were, or one of the principles that we're being asked to follow in thinking about the comprehensive plan is employ smart growth, which essentially says, and Shelter Island doesn't have this base condition, but it says build where the infrastructure exists. So in this case, what we're doing is adding an infrastructure in anticipation of where growth should take place. So that part of the project, I applaud. We're in the right place. The only thing that I previously said is I'm just not sure about the discharge component because of the reasons I previously said.
To your point, there's much more. I mean, if that's the concern, any site in town is going to be constrained, very constrained in what it can do. It's all the circles. I mean, that's tough to.
yeah.
You'd have to shoehorn it in where we're putting it in, or put it somewhere that people don't want it to be.
Hello, good afternoon. Greg Toner. I'm on the WAC, and I did a couple of quick questions, I hope, anyway. The report is online now yet? No?
Not
The full one?
And where
not
would
the-
it be
Not the
found?
full one. Well, Joe,
I'll speak to that in a minute.
okay, yeah. I
Okay,
was gonna
very
say,
good. Second, the one thing that I'm seeing is missing is we have a nitrogen problem and we have a solution out here. It's a little bit like Yogi Berra at one point was driving across Pennsylvania back to New York. And he got on the phone and he said, yeah, they said, where are you? What's going on? He says, oh, we're lost, but we're making good time. And I don't think that it's going to be easy to pass a referendum if it's necessary, if you don't have that question about how did we wind up in nitrox, at the airfield. That's going to be a very difficult thing that you're going to need to do. Question on the nitrox, 55, 60 milligrams going in, something like that. right?
Well, in this case, we expect it's going to be in the hundreds, over 100. We expect it to be 125 to 150.
More than just a regular residence?
Well, think of it this way. We're serving municipal facilities. By and large, there's no showers. There's no
laundry.
washing machines.
Oh.
It's just bathroom.
Okay. What, and you
That's
said,
why.
you said
And
that
there's no food.
Right, and it's high going in.
and what's the level? You said 95% reduction?
Yeah, we
So
expect
what
the
type- what's
effluent-
milligrams per liter?
Yeah, the effluent should be averaging around 3 milligrams.
3 milligrams per liter? Is
Which is, which is considered the limits of technology.
is that pressurized shallow drain field and or,
Oh, good question. Yeah. Well, that's what we're looking at is probably going to be a pressurized.
and that's,
We were thinking about a drip system, but that's not worth the cost because we're there. But the pressurized drain field, I'm glad to hear these words.
and that's important for the items, the new items of
Oh,
concern.
yeah,
and
no,
things
you
like
get
that, right?
additional treatment.
Okay, and that's how that helps get you to the.
It helps.
Okay.
Well, the 3 is coming out of the pipe.
Great.
Right.
Thank you.
All right.
Joe?
Yeah, I was waiting towards the end here to wrap up a couple comments. We have a couple of accumulated questions. The first I'll address is the report distribution. Report distribution was held for a couple of reasons. The first is, as I mentioned earlier, this is a New York State DEC funded grant, and part of the public release required an approval from the DEC before we release a full report. We didn't receive that until about 36 hours ago. The second was that there were some minor changes happening to the report. So to limit confusion on revisions, and those numbers or tweaks often involve things like the estimates or performance related numbers. So to limit confusion as to revisions that were released, we were waiting until the end of this town board work session to release the full report. So that'll be available with the town clerk's office, both in paper and electronic format. I hope that answers the report distribution. Oh, the other issue is that this is just the first of many further conversations. So I hope folks don't feel like they had to be fully briefed. The purpose of this meeting was to brief them straight from the horse's mouth, so to speak, on an opportunity to ask entry level questions so we can continue the conversation, smaller and large settings like this as we move towards the design. Couple of things I wanted to address that came up earlier. I think this overall was a great success. The comments and the questions were excellently put. One thing that's worth noting, the conversation that was brought up about addressing supply, water supply, that is excellent point. For the purposes of this study, we're not really tasked with establishing public water infrastructure. In many ways, the concept is great, but we're sort of burdened by various regulatory issues. It's a whole nother business, as Pio had said. That being said, it's no reason to think that that's not part of the discussion for longer term holistic water solutions for the island. It's just not really part of the scope that we are considering here. Taking that one step further, just giving a little bit more context to the purpose of the project and how we landed on the scope. The first is that we were grant funded, so we had to identify a scope when we were applying for the money to fund the project. And so we're sort of locked in on how we take that approach through to our project. But one basis for the project, and this is something that my office and Pio have worked with throughout the study so far, is that we're looking for a holistic approach to the water quality problems that we're facing here. So you'll see a solution that's recommended today that represents a higher sticker cost than some more straightforward solutions. But one primary objective of the study, and ultimately what the project will be designed to do, is to make the best decision based off of water quality and what will allow us to advance to later phases of either improving water quality, improving the or reducing the impact of municipal buildings. And that's why we're looking at removing the effluent distribution to the other site. Agreed, there are other options that allow us to put the site closer to the center of town, but we're looking at those types of decisions as being more on the small scale. And this is a long-term project. The life of many of these systems is on a scale of decades, and we're trying to incorporate the most long-term impact that we can in a positive way. I've heard from this council many times that we're dealing with a public health crisis at the center of town here, where we have a known elevated nitrate level that's concentrated in areas with the majority of year-round residents, the majority of younger children. Those are very strong words to deal with a public health crisis. And it's my opinion, and the opinion of my office, this is the single best project that we can consider to advance some of those concerns. We can take the responsibility of the municipal buildings here and help reduce our impact in that known crisis area. That would be sort of my closing statement on the merits of this project. If we look at alternatives, we're cutting ourselves short, both from a technology standpoint and also from a long-term perspective. And that's really the emphasis that we tried to make in the scope of this project. So.
And my comment to that is, I heard that yesterday, and that's why I wanted to get our town engineer up here to speak, because I think what you said at the very end is key. You know, we have a school building which houses several hundred kids and faculty, you know, every day. So they can't go to a water fountain and get clean water out of a water fountain is an issue, as well as all of the good residents that live here year round in the center of town. So we are committed. I think we're heading in the right direction. I think this is the #1 priority for this town board. And the last thing I'll say is having Joe Fenora as our town engineer oversee all of these projects, including this particular project, has been a breath of fresh air for this town board. Not only does the man multitask, but he's right on target. He's very thorough. And I think Lombardo Associates, by the way, for those people that don't know it, when you talk about Fresh Pond Study, they came in, they went well above and beyond. I see James Eklund in the back nodding his head saying they went well and beyond with data collection of Fresh Pond to be able to do a comprehensive study of Fresh Pond. And I think the people in the Fresh Pond Neighbors Association were very pleased with the results that they got, or what they will get out of that study. So that when Lombardo applied for this particular thing and we put it out for bid, we were very confident we were going to get a pretty good comprehensive presentation here too. And you know, we thank you for your hard work and what you've done here. And I particularly, and the last thing I'll say is for you to you know, acknowledge, as Joe just did, the quality of the questions and the ability to be flexible and to seriously look at the economic cost and alternative approaches is something that speaks volumes about somebody that's not jamming something right down your throat saying, this is it. You've made it abundantly clear that, you know, again, it's a question that we're going to have to ultimately understand, you know, to solve, whether it is at the airfield or here in the center of town or some other place. That'll ultimately be determined by the town board based on these questions and your suggestions. But, you know, great
Sure.
job, and Lombardo, great job.
Thanks. Yeah, one last comment, not to overstay my welcome up here, but one last comment I had written here that I wanted to address was about expansion. And one of the other main goals of the project was to develop a solution that we would reduce and streamline implementation. And so it's not lost on us that laying pipe down 114 and through some neighborhoods would raise some eyebrows about, either in a negative way or a positive way, the potential to be added to the system. And so it is very clearly not part of our scope in this project to add any additional users. And that's multifold. The first is that the complexity of forming a district outside of this municipality would take quite a few time to iron out the details. It's commonplace. It happens all over. But one major advantage to this system is that we're essentially one customer. It's only municipal buildings.
Yes.
Those municipal buildings are in the same, have the same tax status. They have the same taxpayer. And so we've consolidated all of the impacts of, or reduce the complexity of, a broad district that incorporates private property, public property, commercial property, and we've reduced it to as small of a footprint as we could. And it really aligns with the overall goals of the project for the municipality itself to help reduce its impact. We've scooped up every large contributor to the nitrogen problem we could that's within our footprint, within our jurisdiction here. And that's the only components that are available to this project. And in an effort to not mix politics with engineering, you know, that idea of future users is something that the board and the town will have to make in the future if they think it's right for them. And so the option will be there, but we certainly don't want to address that issue at this time. That's outside of the scope of this project.
Excellent points. Excellent points.
Meg, you have something?
What kind of qualifications does the operator of the system need to have? So that's something I'd like to know, you need different qualifications to run different types of plants. So what would the qualifications be for the Nitrex system? And then how well does your system work if it's underutilized?
Mm.
So I know you're designing for 6,000
Right.
gallons, but you're probably going to get 2 if we're being real. So
Right.
how does it work when
Yeah.
underutilized?
Yeah, now, in terms of the operator requirements, I don't remember the code, the category, but it's pretty simple. And we have a bunch of operators that on the East Fork, excuse me, on the South Fork, that provide that service.
Mhm.
So, they're a difficult, group to even, there's not many of them left.
Right, that's why I'm asking. Like,
Right.
is this something where we have an opportunity to train somebody to
Well, they
take
have to
over
get
this
they have to get a
position,
state
or-
license. They have to get a state license. So, but it would be something that if they have frankly, you just have to have a chemical, mathematical, and then the real issues with the operators having mechanical and electrical, aptitude.
Right.
So, somebody could be trained. It's not going to take much.
Mhm.
And anyone who can operate any other treatment plant can operate ours, is the bottom line, with
Right.
training from us.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. I mean, we're only talking about pumps and floats
Yeah,
and
our
switches.
I mean,
system-
I
our
do that all
system-
the time.
It
so-
doesn't.
Our system is much simpler than an activated sludge system, for example. So
yeah.
there's.
So, and then what was your other question? I'm sorry.
If your system's underutilized, how does it perform?
Yeah, well, that's one of the things that we target is it's modular. We shut off sections. And for instance, that's the difference between the techniques we use with others is that, and that's why they have to add food. We just shut off sections. For instance, the one in Hampton Bays, half of it is shut off.
Mhm.
More than half.
Right.
Yeah, more than
It's
that.
designed for, 11,000 gallons per day, and it's only seeing 1,000 right now, so.
Right.
So, and it's
we're-
working
We're
fine.
coming out at 3.
Where's,
So-
where's the one in Hampton Bays?
It's at the Canoe Place Inn.
Okay.
All right, it's right. It's really the boathouses across
Boathouses
the
across the
street.
street, yeah.
Okay.
So, and that was the first one of its type approved in Suffolk County. That's no
How
small.
long has it been there?
Well, it's been in operation for 2 years.
Okay.
Yeah, but it's been in development for 9. But that's the reason why we like this approach, technology. It's more of a fixed film versus activated sludge. Activated sludge systems don't do well with varying flow. They have problems. They're the ones that need dog food. So that's the reason why as well, it's modular, so we can shut it off.
I mean, commercial is a different entity. With IA systems, you typically need a carbon feed, you need things like that because of the
Alkalinity is a big
intense.
issue.
yeah.
Right, right, exactly. And see, we proactively deal with that.
Mhm.
And so that, you're right. I mean, we even have carbon feed in some of our systems as a backup
Right, I did notice
if we ever
that.
need it.
Yeah,
Never used it, but it's there.
but it's there.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, residentially, the IAs work very well. Like I have a lot of them, I just finished sampling that were under 10 milligrams per liter. But commercial is a different animal.
Right,
Different
because
BOD,
they don't have a lot of BOD in
Right.
commercials and especially, I call it office type.
Mhm.
It's mainly bathroom,
It's high concentrate.
high nitrogen and low BODs.
Mhm.
So, all right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Anybody else have any
Yeah, I
questions
was
or
gonna
comments?
say, Brian, anyone from the school, since you're
Yeah, Mike.
a load contributor, potentially?
I would just say, Amber, that, we were far along in this project and it's good to see you, BJ.
Good to see you.
And we have been doing this for about 2 years now to get to our point. And our school architect is here too, John Longo. He's a great guy. And, Jerry came to us and he said that, he wants to do what's best for the Shelter Island taxpayer. And the taxpayer that pays for the school is the same taxpayer that pays for the town. So we are on board with anything that's feasible that saves the Shelter Island taxpayer as much money as possible. So with that said, we obviously want to see it happen because we were ready to go. Essentially, we were ready to start this summer. I mean, we had permits up at the state and we did do a lot of pre-work, but most of that work is able to be used towards this town project, which is really nice. So essentially, the school's responsibility would be to pipe all of our stuff to hook up to the town's project. So we are in full.
There is a
support.
plan A and a plan B, as Mike mentioned yesterday and Brian's office, and it's because the school, one of the septic, is in a bad state of affairs, and you don't know when you're going to experience a failure in that system. You're really moving along with both plans simultaneously with plan A and plan B.
Exactly.
I just wanted the people to understand that as we move forward. The schools.
Theo?
No, that's a very true statement. We are able to.
Right.
deviate.
Can you come up to the mic? Sorry, people can't hear on Zoom.
Good afternoon, John Longo, BBS Architects. I represent the school district. We are their design engineer firm for their on-site system, which is based on IA technology, which again is all the things I've been hearing with low BOD, and we do have a carbon feed system. We are modular in certain capacities, so we are anticipating low flow. We know we're going to have a ton of ammonia in the system and low nitrates. So we are taking all that into account to be able to control our wastewater concentration before it's leached back into the ground. Okay. This was all occurring independent of the town's process, but we are in a way where we have to, even for our stuff on site, have a pump system and redirect flow within the building itself to even achieve our plan, which to Brian's point is we are at New York State for our education department permit. We are, I would say, I could probably pull the health department permit soon.
Yeah.
So we're kind of pumping the brakes a little bit here, because the last thing we want to do is be permitted for our system and then deviate from that, and that then creates other issues with the health department.
Yeah.
So we're in a good spot, and I think we're listening here just to see, what the trajectory here is, and to the superintendent's point, it only makes sense to be partnered with you guys. We're just trying to figure out how we can make that happen.
So can you stay here?
Mhm.
So can you give us an idea of timeline here? Given like you'd have to start almost from zero with the state ed department? If you went and joined us?
It would be a amendment to the permit.
Okay.
So it's not zero.
Not zero.
No.
There's quite a bit of paperwork that we get out of the way first.
Yeah, we talked about that yesterday,
Yeah.
BJ, that's an issue, we're not, they would not have to start from scratch.
The design changes
Right.
is okay.
Yeah,
right,
would
all
be
right.
minimal. Yeah,
But our trajectory at the moment is summer of 22 construction.
right.
Construction, that, we can't meet that, can we?
No, but
But that's understood.
Yeah.
I think it's time sensitive from the school's point of view that they do not want to see the town drag its feet for months after month after month, because you're forcing them into going with their plan.
Right.
Right. We're eager to get our side cleaned up as quickly as possible, but with the understanding that if that is 18-month delay, then I'm not speaking on behalf of the school district in any way, but that would be an understood, timeline, that there would be a delay of that kind of a length. All right.
Yep.
Good. Thank you.
All good points. Thank you.
Yeah, we provided
Yeah.
sort of an initial schedule in the report on page 52. We just generally speaking, we would expect the design of the whatever approach you folks sort of choose to be completed by, let's say, April, May of this year. Would go in for permitting. We would expect it would take, we frankly are starting the permitting process now. We've already reached out to DEC and because we want to get their approval of the plan. And they have to issue the discharge permit requirements. So it's not unreasonable for this project to go out to bid in the fall. And so you could see construction start in the early part of 2023.
Right. That's what we talked about yesterday.
Yeah. And it should not take, probably 6. Well, yeah, the nice thing is to have the construction start before the summer. That would be the
Right,
idea.
right.
That would be the idea.
Okay.
James Eklund, you want to come up?
James Eklund, I'm Chair of the Water Quality Improvements, a lot of other initials.
Advisory Board.
Whatever it is. I just had a couple of questions, sort of elicited by what Joe said. The 3-inch force main that's going to feed to wherever it's going to go.
Right.
Is that a moot point that's able to handle more flow, or based on, the fact that you have to get the sewer district in place and all that? Or let's say there was political will to have a sewer district, is that thing big enough to take houses,
Right.
you were saying what, 160 houses or something? We had to.
Well, that's something that we'll do during design, Jim, is that we would go through the calculations of how much flow it could handle and how many other properties that could represent. So does it go to a 3 or 4 inch? I don't know. That's something that that's a decision that would be made during design.
Right, I would think
3-inch pipe carries a lot of water
No, I
under
get
pressure.
it.
Yeah, you
See what happens in my boat when I take that.
right,
But,
right. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if 2 inches enough, but 3 inch should be pretty big.
And given sort of the actual, in reality, the minimal effluent output, is Sachem's Woods a place that would be a spot to discharge?
Where's that again?
Sachem's Wood, is that 99?
Right behind IGA.
It's behind the IGA.
There's plenty of space
Big
there
woods
to
back there.
put,
Oh, yeah.
and coupled with, the pressurized shallow drain field.
Right. Yeah, the town has a lot of.
Outside of that, what's coming out of the drain field going into the aquifer? Is that reasonable to think, cost wise, that it might be better to put the thing there?
Yeah, that's it.
There are a lot of things that need to be sort of quantified, I think, here that before we can get to a real good decision.
Right,
Cost benefit.
right.
In the WQI goes through a whole litany.
Yeah,
of
we
stuff.
looked at that site because it's obviously town owns it, et cetera. There were issues about where's it drain to that we looked at, because that was a little bit of concern, and the travel time is going to be a lot longer.
Right.
So.
But if what you're putting in there is really good.
Right, no, it is. And I mean, it's in the milieu. Trying to remember again, the reason why we even put in there, it says we put it down as lower priority just because of the longer travel.
Right.
Now,
Um,
that's another strategic decision that needs to be made.
and if the school weren't part of this, what would the cost be reduced, or is the cost still pretty
No.
much?
Yeah,
Same.
the cost is predominantly in the sewers.
Right.
And the treatment plant would go down a bit, but the cost is heavily in the sewers. So you're building a heavy, like one of the gentlemen said, you're building heavy infrastructure that you want to look at it from a decade's perspective, that's going to support comprehensive planning and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So to that point, that's some of the issues that we would go examine during design, and whatever the town board decides, it was what we will do on the pipe side. And we'll present the options of, so that's a design issue, I guess, sort of.
And before summer, you mean this summer? That you would start?
Well, by this summer, we expect the design is completed and permitting would be established, so that we would hope that it would go up to bid in the fall.
Okay, so it wasn't this summer that we were thinking.
No. So construction would occur next spring,
Got it. All right.
spring 23.
Thank you.
Right.
Any other final questions from anybody in the audience or anybody online here? If not,
Okay, all right.
I would just ask the question, is there any, obviously we can think about these things later on, but once you're collecting wastewater from from the entire school and all the municipal buildings, is there any thought to monitor the waste itself? I know that for things like disease monitoring, The fact of having a single collection point for all the liquid effluent suddenly gives you the opportunity to know better what's happening with your population.
Yeah, no, I think that's not a wastewater treatment
Right.
question, the asking
Sure.
whether you can, yeah, like virus and other assays. I mean, sure, it would give you the opportunity to do that for sure.
To be monitoring essentially the
Yeah, you
year-round
wouldn't have to
population.
monitor
and
individual properties, you
school.
monitor the point.
Yeah, I mean, the
Absolutely.
monitoring program will include what comes to the treatment plant.
Right.
So you get the mix of it.
Yeah.
So that's
And-
routine that would be done. That's
Yeah.
part of the permit.
Influence sampling, yeah, to PO's
Yeah.
point, influence sampling is part of the permit. If you certainly are free to elect to add to the permit required influence sampling.
And frankly, the sampling is a healthy percentage of the cost. So
Oh, of the annual operating?
O&M, yeah.
Okay.
And that's the advantage of a single system too. If you look at it, distributed
When you-
IA systems, now you got to sample every single one of those.
Gotcha.
How often do you do
Whereas
it?
here now you have the opportunity to monitor the
Another reason why
population
they don't.
essentially.
You never really know how
Right,
well they're doing in between your sampling.
yeah.
Well, I think it was a good opening. We spent 2 hours of good discussion on it. I think it generated a lot of good questions, and I think we'll pause for 2 minutes, and anybody who'd like to clear the room, we'll move on with our agenda.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Dr. Dolce.
Thank you
Thanks,
very much.
Mike. Yeah. All right, are we done? I think Amber's got 2 minutes.
Or no? Christina, can you mute this?
We have to bring it in.
Time to go.
Oh, is that right? Ah.
Retired.
Let's see when Jerry gets back in there. What?
What's next? Okay, count. Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry
good.
about that.
We did do some testing today, just, you know, on fresh pond.
Mhm.
And the results were very good.
Oh, good.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's an exciting project.
Yes.
That's good. Good. Yes, Jerry is back. All right, so moving on to the next agenda item, it is the 2022 meeting calendar. And so
Amber,
we have,
Dottie and I had discussed this as far as the work sessions following a Monday holiday. And I kind of thought it was kind of silly to change them to Wednesdays. Because then we have to change out all the meetings, you know, for that week. So my suggestion to Dottie was that we just keep them on Tuesdays.
I'm happy. I could do
Is it a
that.
problem for anybody?
no,
Have to
No,
start on
to be,
Tuesdays,
to be
or-
honest with you, Jerry, I support that.
Let's try it. If it
Okay,
doesn't
stick
work,
with
we'll-
Tuesdays.
Fun.
yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess, has anyone looked at the 2022 calendar with respect? I mean, rarely is there a holiday on a Tuesday.
No, they're falling on a Monday, so,
Mhm.
so that
Mondays are-
means there would be quite a few that would be changed. You know, do you want to just get on a regular schedule or?
What about Juneteenth? Is that always on a Monday?
No.
No, it's June
always,
14th,
June 18th?
14th,
No,
that's
June
all.
19th. It's 19th.
Is it the 19th?
Yeah, June 19th, so.
It's whatever day it is in June. If it falls on a Friday.
I just
it
bought a new
falls-
calendar.
it's Observed on the following Monday.
June 19th is a Sunday.
Right,
Okay,
And
so
vet-
It falls on a
yeah,
weekend.
and
rather, it's
Veterans Day is on a
observed following Monday.
Friday.
okay.
And Veterans Day is on a Friday, so,
Yeah.
yeah, so we'll avoid that on a Friday meetings.
So when would our first January Friday town board meeting be?
I kind of scratched it out to be like the 7th,
Okay,
The 7th,
okay,
the 7th and the 28th. This is what I've got to scratch it. We
Okay.
might have to
Alright.
change it. but
Yep.
all right,
Just to start working on it, you know.
yeah.
Mhm. All right, so January 7th, January 28th.
Well, I think that's good, because the sooner the better, because then we get Meg on board, right?
Yeah,
I mean, so
February.
rather than
Well, she's
wait.
going to be on board on the 4th.
Oh,
Yes.
right, okay, on a Tuesday, okay,
Mhm.
all right. So,
the Board of
so
Elections.
Martin Luther King Day is on the 17th, which is a Monday, but we can be, we're still on the 18th, yeah. And then we're on the 25th,
Yeah.
and then,
Yeah, okay, so then the 28th, and we've got February 18th. And March 18th, wait, no, March 11th.
The first holiday is April 22nd, whatever that is.
So that's 18th of February, and then it goes one,
What's April 22nd?
I don't know, it's my calendar's highlighted. I don't know if that's a,
2, 3. March 11th, Amber, you said,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
March
Earth Day.
11th,
Okay, good.
and then it goes to April 1st. That's April Fool's Day.
Yes. April, yeah.
We won't really meet though, Jared. It'll be April Fool's.
Well, that's,
Okay.
that's the place where I slipped in a 4-weeker.
What's that?
Oh, you slipped in a 4-weeker?
Oh, you
Yeah.
went to the 8th?
Where'd you go?
Went to the 8th of
All right, good.
April,
All right, I love it.
from the 11th of March to,
Oh,
Yes,
just to make it come out a little better.
there you go.
so then the 29th.
So then you go to 29th.
Don't write this in ink.
No, no, no dot next to the.
Mhm.
Then we're going to May the 20th, which is nice. Stays away from
Yeah, right,
Memorial Day.
right.
So the 20th, 1, 2, 3.
Someone will give it to me.
So it then goes to June the 10th,
Correct.
Okay.
June 10th. Then it goes to July 1st,
That's part of the weekend.
which is
no?
part of July 4th
Yeah.
weekend.
What do you think? I don't have a problem, but the holiday is gonna be Monday.
Yeah,
Right.
So I think we're good, no? Or-
yeah,
I don't see a problem with July 1st. I mean,
okay.
it's 4th of July, it's,
Then it's good because you get out early. You want to,
yeah, right. Then we go to July 22nd,
Mhm.
yeah.
Margaret's birthday. There you go.
It's birthday.
Then we go 1,
Oh, my
2,
goodness.
3, then
We can go
August 12th, August 12th.
Oh, wait a minute.
No,
Um,
1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
Looks like I slipped in another 4-weeker there.
Oh, you slipped, you went to the 19th?
I'm just,
For the 19th, that'd be great.
Okay.
Well, let's confirm that.
2, 3. Yeah, I did.
You went to the 19th?
Yeah.
Okay, so cross that out. We're going with the
And
19th.
brings you to
Nine.
September 9th.
So then it goes to the 26th, and then we're into September. Page, and then we go to the, we go to the 9th of September,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And
That
then
keeps-
30th of
That
September,
keeps it away from Labor Day.
all right?
Yes.
And that's the 30th of September.
Right,
Mhm.
yeah.
And then we go to October 21st,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then we go to November 1,
11.
2, 3, 11th, which is Veterans Day.
So you back that up a day.
You're gonna want to go on the 10th?
We'll do it the 10th and
It's,
what do you want to do there?
well, it's either got to go the 18th or the 10th.
Oh, yeah, it shouldn't be November 11th.
I have,
Let's
I
do
have
the
it marked down as the 18th if you want to go.
Let's do the 18th, but that's good because then we
Yes.
have Thanksgiving and there.
Yeah,
you know
then
what
you
I-
start to,
Right.
Yeah.
It's a really short week before that too, because you have election day on the 8th and then the 11th.
right,
Right,
so
right.
Days off. So
Right.
2 holidays in 1 week
Okay.
is too much.
18th, too much.
All
Too
right,
much.
so the 18th it is, then the 25th, the 2nd, the 9th of October,
December.
December.
Yep,
of
Okay.
December, excuse me.
December,
Of December,
Yes.
and that takes us right.
then we can set the last meeting of the year for the 27th, which
Yes.
falls on a Tuesday anyway.
Okay,
Yeah.
So
last meeting, okay.
they can just coincide,
Yeah,
so.
last,
Okay.
right, there
No
you go.
problem, no big problem there.
No, ma'am. Done much better when we do it all together.
All right.
All right, so that takes care of that.
This year
Right.
worked out, next year worked out pretty good on calendar.
All right, good.
Liaisons.
All right, yep. The next thing is committee liaisons.
So we put this list together. This list is already color coded.
Mhm. Yeah,
Uh,
and some of these are committees and some of these are sort of,
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I just
Working
took everything that
groups.
people had handed me and put it into one massive list because I was starting to confuse myself.
Yeah,
Mhm.
this is great.
So-
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
oh, yeah. Yeah, since you're.
Yeah. The things like on the bottom, the health and wellness is really something that's not we meet though pretty much now every other Friday. It used to be every Friday for a year and we meet every other Friday, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider that.
Mhm.
Peconic Estuary Partnership, I do also, and we only meet quarterly, so I wouldn't consider that
In the
really.
country club, same.
And the
It's
country
only the
club,
summer.
we meet periodically, but again, I would consider that the same kind of situation. IT committee, is somebody doing IT? there?
Yep,
Is it-
that's me.
All right, so we're writing your name in,
Yes.
right there?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's just one person. It's an internal.
All right,
Committee, so it's not a-
that's Amber. We're working from bottom to top.
There's also media committee is also missing.
Media. Oh, that's
Okay.
not part of IT?
IT is
Yeah,
media.
it's website. Yeah, so it's, it's Christina, Mary
Is it
Ellen,
ID?
myself.
IT/media or no?
Nope,
separate?
it's a different group.
Separate. Okay, so media is you?
Yes.
Should it be the same though? Could we do a little reorg? I'm just asking.
Yeah, I mean, on those two, I don't mind just because of consistency and going forward.
Yeah, that they're separate, you mean? Or you don't mind
Oh,
that
no,
they're
they're
combined?
separate. No, they're separate.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah, no,
separate.
they're definitely separate. It's,
All right.
I mean, there's some,
Different groups of people.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
it's-
okay.
There's some,
Yeah, there's,
Christina and I are both on both, but then there's other people filling in on
Okay.
others.
yeah, the community
We're going
center.
back to
Yeah,
five
should that
people
be
too,
part
so
of
you
the
can
rec?
split it up a little more.
Jim?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I don't see the recreation committee
there.
here. Is
Bid
it?
rec, about halfway.
Oh, yeah.
down.
So community center cross out.
Yeah,
That
okay.
doesn't exist.
That's
All
what-
right.
that's what it is.
Okay.
Like I said, I got 3 different
What's-
lists and I
Yes,
just
yes. Well, can we go to the true liaison stuff?
go up to the
first?
top.
Okay.
Yeah, let's start with those, just so we've got the,
Yeah,
yeah, so capital planning and
It's meat and
grants
potatoes.
has been Jim and myself.
Mhm.
So I'm proposing keeping that the same because Jim is the chairperson and then I bring the money perspective.
Right.
Mhm.
But
Mhm. Sounds
I'm
good to me.
okay with that.
Okay.
and we now have
Did I
meetings
lose-
down
did
to
we
a
lose
half hour,
Jerry?
so Amber's good with that.
Did we lose Jerry?
I know, I lost him on my screen. Oh, there you are.
Hey, Amber,
Um,
I don't have it in front of me, but can we just remind everybody that the primary is obligated to be the liaison and the secondary is a backup?
Yep,
Right.
yes. I was
Oh.
gonna say for that one, we're,
We're both on the
Yeah,
committee.
we both.
Yeah, we're
But
both
then on the
on.
next one, we had Community Housing Board was next on the list.
Mhm.
And so Jerry and I are both on that one. But I mean, that's one that, we can talk about to see, because I feel like everybody's interested in that.
No, I think the two of you, it's very appropriate for you to be,
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm really interested actually in the CPF.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, good.
if
All right,
that's
so then
okay.
I'm the liaison number one, so I would be the lead on, although Jerry goes to all of these ones too.
I was gonna
anyway.
say, you
But
can
so-
change up the liaison. I just put, if I
Yeah.
knew somebody was already on the list, I put them in a
Yes,
line.
yeah, so I was gonna say, but as we're going
You don't
through,
have to share your list with me, Jimmy.
Okay.
okay, all right, so then Community Preservation Fund, so BJ, you said you're.
You can be the backup, yeah. Or
I
You
try
wanna
to
be-
sit in on whatever I can, so if somebody wants to be a liaison with my name on it, feel free.
All right. So Jerry, do you become liaison two? And then BJ, you want to be liaison
that's
one?
fine. That's fine.
All right.
All right.
Okay,
Comprehensive Plan,
both of us.
Yeah.
yeah, and that's liaison one and two are both.
I already, I put us on
Yes.
there.
Yeah. and-
No,
and
no,
that's-
We have to, we have to,
Next up.
I thought that was more of a mandate.
so that's why you put us here. No, but we have to form a committee. We have a lot of work to do.
Yeah,
We
do.
do,
Yeah.
we do have a lot of work.
Yeah.
to do.
And that's why it's
All you
heavily
need to do
weighted.
is the list.
And one of the
We
things-
realize that all these committees are not the same.
Right?
Yeah, once we figure out this list, I had sort of gone through and done a weighting to sort of say, okay, the comprehensive plan is worth 4 because you guys are going to be meeting weekly,
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
maybe even more.
Yeah.
And then something that's quarterly is only going to get a 0.25 weighting,
Right.
so
Right.
Mhm.
when we settle this all down, I do want to next week, just say, okay, here's Amber's weighting on these things. Are we out of balance and do we need to shift anything?
Sounds
So
good.
let's keep going with wishes, but then
Yeah.
we'll revisit the workload.
Mhm.
Yeah. Regardless of how it goes, I honestly think the comprehensive plan is something that it carries, it's just an enormous task. So, it needs 2 people totally dedicated to it.
You're scaring me.
No. CAC, I've done, and I used to do it with Mike this year, and before that I did it with Albert. I'm very capable of doing it by myself. If anybody else wants to join it, but I go to all the meetings. I was there
Mhm.
last night.
Okay.
Actually, I have to leave the basketball game early to get here.
So it's okay to leave it blank? If you ever,
Yeah,
want
you don't
cov-
need-
if you want
you-
coverage, you call somebody?
Yeah, to be honest with you, and I've only missed one meeting, and
Yeah.
that's because I was thrown up at the time of the last meeting, and they couldn't get in the building.
Do you mind?
More information I
Yeah.
needed to know.
Yeah, I'm
All
not-
right, okay. But that was a reality.
Yeah.
you
But if you
know. I
need
was
someone to cover,
preoccupied.
just call us.
I was preoccupied. I couldn't get to a phone.
People gonna call.
All right, Deer and Tick, Jim's been on that for.
Yeah, forever. Before I was elected. Yeah, I've been on it for 12 years, 6 as a councilman, 6 before. So I've been on it for about 12 years. And I enjoy the group. Jerry usually joins up, but I'll definitely be there. If Jerry's usually comes to all those meetings also, but if he has a conflict, then Jerry, I'm going to cover that.
EMS, I took that over after Paul. It meets quarterly, and so it's not necessary to have a second person on that
Okay.
unless
Right.
I know I'm not going to make a meeting.
Which one is that?
EMS.
EMS,
Okay,
Amber. I'll give you this down. I'll run.
yeah, I know, yeah.
Green Options, I'm not it. Who's on that currently?
Jerry,
I don't know.
Jerry, or you mean who's on the committee?
Who's the
itself?
liaison?
It might have been Albert. I didn't put Albert on the list.
Oh, right. Yeah.
So he could have been Albert.
Okay.
It,
yeah,
it,
so
wa-
that's
it,
not-
it was.
Yeah,
I
That's
think it
exactly who it
was.
was.
Yeah.
That's exactly who it
Okay.
was.
So you got your name put down on this, Jerry, but do you want it? Or does anybody like?
Yeah, that's fine. If nobody wants it, I don't mind.
I'd have to zoom in, but
What time is it? Is that 9 in the morning? Is that when it usually meets?
when does it meet, Jerry?
Thursday, I think
Well,
they meet in
usually
the
it's in
afternoon
like 2
around
o'clock in
1
the afternoon, I think.
o'clock.
2 o'clock?
That would not,
That's a rough time for me.
yeah, that's rough for us.
Oh, good, Christine.
What's that, Christina?
Is Tim on?
They used to meet in the afternoon, 6 p.m., but then they switched to 9 a.m. So it would be good to confirm with them.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I really only got evenings on Thursdays.
All right.
Okay.
Planning Board has been myself, and then it was Mike actually it was Mike Bebon as the lead, and I was the backup. And then ZBA, little relation between the two. So I was the lead on that, and Mike was the backup. So
Mhm.
it's been just me on both of those.
Mhm.
I figured since
Put
I'm
Meg
on planning board, I would do planning board just
Mhm.
because I know the players.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And then
Good.
I was willing to do ZBA as well, because I do feel like they tie together.
Okay,
Okay.
can we put you as liaison number 1 for
That's
Planning
fine.
Board, and then I'll be the backup, and
Yep.
then
Okay.
put in Meg for.
So you're just
ZBA.
switching those two on planning board, right?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
yeah.
Morning.
And then ZBA, I'll be the lead, and Meg will be the backup on that.
That's fine.
ZBA, okay.
Yeah.
So,
WAC was.
Albert and Mike,
Albert.
I think.
And I
So,
did that before,
Mhm.
way back in the day, so I don't mind doing that,
Okay.
okay?
Yeah, I put myself on there too.
But I'm
just-
doing CPF. We're just gonna have to work out the calendars in terms of which Mondays. Or
Right.
what, you know what I mean?
Oh.
If I'm gonna sit on
So
both.
is BJ
right,
going in
WAC is
WAC with
Monday,
Meg?
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
I'm,
but
al-
they're-
I'm also interested in WMAC, if that's all right. As a
Yeah.
Go for
second
it.
To you, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, I've been on it for forever.
Yeah.
And I, have a good rapport with the people
Right.
on there, so I'm happy to stay there.
Okay,
Wait, didn't write down who's on WAC.
me.
Okay.
And I have myself on there
And
too.
Meg.
BJ and then Meg.
Okay.
And then on WMAC, it's Jim and BJ. If you want to be an alternate. you can be an
Alternate, yeah, that's what I
All right,
want.
All right.
WQIAB, I was thinking Meg, not for you to be on there.
Yeah,
Right.
I would have recommended.
I was going to
against
say the
that.
same
Yeah.
thing. I was like, I'm going to go to the meetings, but as a layperson, I'm not going to go in a professional capacity.
Right, yes, exactly. So
Yeah.
I can continue to be the lead on that one. But it would be nice to have a backup.
I would be the backup, but on Thursdays, I'd have to zoom in, but that's all right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
All right.
That's all done on Zoom anyway.
Oh, is it?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, I was gonna say it's
Yeah.
still only Zoom. West Neck Water District,
Are we keeping Joe like in that position? I know he's not a council person, but. do
oh
we-
yeah, oh no, he's the advisor to the committee.
He's
Oh,
he's a
you mean for
permanent member.
WAC,
WQI.
oh, WQI.
Which one?
No, I'm saying
No,
for West
West
Neck
Neck.
Oh,
Water.
West
We're
Neck.
on,
West Neck.
we're on West
Yeah,
Neck Water here.
sorry.
Permanent member.
So
Yeah.
do we need a council person if we have Joe there working at? I mean, to be honest. with
No,
you.
they do because.
You
when-
do, yeah.
All right.
Even now that we
Yeah.
have
Okay.
Suffolk County?
I think you still need someone.
Yes, the
Right.
reason being is when when Gary was supervisor, he wasn't going to the meetings because there were town people who were on the board there. So he was getting his updates, but they actually requested that somebody from the town board
Okay,
attend, just
who would
to
like it?
have that extra. I've been doing it, so I don't mind, especially because there's often a numbers component.
I was gonna
to
say,
that
they
one.
math.
Yeah. So, you know,
All right.
especially this whole Suffolk County water.
Anybody to back up
analysis.
Amber on West Neck Water?
I can back up Amber.
Okay, that's good.
Is it going back to quarterly, Amber?
It will go back to quarterly once we get past the contract.
All right, so ZBA, we already have Amber and Meg.
Yeah.
Highway and Public Works is
Well,
Jim. and-
actually, let's just jump down because the only other one in here that should be moved, well, there's a ferry study group is like a standing committee and Taylor's Island is a standing committee. So I'd like to see those
Okay,
moved
all right.
up on the spreadsheet.
Okay, all right, so move them up.
So ferry study group, I think Jerry, you've been on that and it's, you know, it meets when there's rate need
Yeah,
changes.
I'll stay on that one. Yeah.
Yep.
We did this pretty
I think,
spreadsheet. with
I think
all
having
colors.
one person, I think you get away with one person. there.
Yeah, because
Oh,
it
yeah,
meets so
'cause-
infrequently.
I color coordinate everything.
Yes.
You can just.
Yeah. And then Taylor's Island has been myself and Jerry. But I don't mind spreading the load.
I'm happy to take that.
Okay.
They
have
meet
some-
early. If anybody wants to jump in, feel free.
Oh, early?
Oh, yeah. They're a Tuesday morning.
I can do Tuesday. I'm in
Okay.
town, yeah.
Okay, yeah, it's
All
9
right,
AM on Tuesday. And
So BJ is going to take over for Amber?
Yeah.
yes, and actually that's kind of good because sometimes capital planning and grants has been conflicting with Taylor's Island, sometimes with,
Right.
you know, the need to move the meetings because of some, you know, holidays and things. So
Okay.
that would be really good. But I have some stuff to give to you.
Oh,
with
great.
respect to that, an update.
Good file handoffs.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
All right.
Bring out the hand cards.
What
Yeah.
is-
All right, anything else that has to move up? You want
No,
moved up?
those are the only two.
All right, so the rest of them going right down, Highway and Public Works, it's been Jim and Jar. I'm fine. Again, you know, I have that little situation with the Highway Department. I don't know if that it impacts your decision-making about me dealing with highway people, but I'm, you know, I'm over it. I'm fine with it. You know, that's your call, Jar, whatever you think.
Whether if Jim's still comfortable, I have
Okay, I was just trying to remember,
no
like,
legal issues.
okay.
No, that was only on the negotiations for contract and stuff that they didn't want you, you know, involved. So I don't have any
Rich
problem.
Zuckerman's
I
gonna do that
I
anyway.
deal with highway all the time, you know, with capital planning. Waterways, that's not, doesn't exist.
Yeah. I was
Okay,
just-
yeah,
isn't
I
that-
had so many that I was like,
That
oh,
doesn't
no.
exist. I'm not in, there's no such animal. Fit and
What do you mean?
recreation.
Wait, whoa. You're saying waterways doesn't exist?
Well, the waterways, the Water Management Advisory, that exists, but
You have a WMAC, which is a separate committee.
right.
You have the Waterways Committee of the Town Board, which you are on, and Albert is on.
We never met though.
What does
I mean,
that
we
do?
only
Well,
meet
you were
as a-
supposed to be meeting. Remember, I told you that, you know, you're the ones that are supposed to make the decisions, like on the repairs and things like that. So you do need a committee in between there,
Okay,
okay?
all
All
right.
right.
So its
We're
official
gonna
name
get you
is,
on the right track.
the official ways are Waterways Committee?
Who's on the, who's on that?
Jim and
Waterways,
Albert.
yes.
Jim and Albert.
Okay. Oh, it's just two of them. You can't have you can't
No,
have a
no.
quorum of the board on a committee.
All right, so it's Jim. I'm back on that again.
Jim.
And
So,
Somebody
so
else
that
going on
ties
with you, or
in
you're
with
just doing
waterways.
it by yourself?
I'll do it by
Okay,
myself.
that's
You'll do it
fine.
by- You
That'll
meet
work.
with yourself?
So BJ, are you asking to be on that
I
too?
said you'll meet with yourself. You have to be a committee.
I can have a conversation. with myself.
Oh, I'm not surprised.
Come on. I get along. I like the guy.
Go on, get along.
We get along. Dolligan's all right. Don't hear, don't listen to everything you
Yeah,
hear.
you already have a WMAC up there.
Yeah,
All right, so
fit and recreation. I
throw
don't
me in
need a
there.
second person. I
Oh,
mean,
yeah,
that's
that
my,
should be moved up. too.
that's
Sorry.
my
Yeah.
that's my background, you
All
know,
right,
so I
yeah.
feel very comfortable in sitting on
Okay.
that committee. Safety is Bob.
That's an insurance-based committee that they require us to.
Okay,
Okay,
so
not
Bob becomes the primary liaison. Do we move him over? He does by himself?
Mhm.
So, Jim, do you need a backup for the Fit and Recreation Committee? Or are
No,
you
he's gonna
usually
do
good?
Yeah,
Okay.
we're good.
And then for Waterways, it's Jim and BJ? Okay.
Yeah.
All right, now I'm up to date.
All right, waterways, you want to join me, huh? Okay, we'll have a good conversation.
It'll be a three-way.
Shoreline
What-
access
what
task
happened-
force,
What'd you do with safety?
safety, Bob's moving over to
Okay.
as the primary, as the liaison.
Okay.
You know,
Shoreline access is not going to be much longer?
no, but it still meets, but
Yeah.
the meetings are being, we're going to the non-essential, not non-essential, the big
yeah.
13 or whatever the heck they were called, we're moving beyond that.
It wasn't a standing.
I'll stay with that.
Yeah.
I've been with that. Jerry often joins me on that. So that's good. Buildings and grounds. Jerry? Recycling, Jerry?
Why can't
Yep.
recycling be part of highway? Or why is it separate?
Well, it is separate. There are
Different
three separate
departments.
entities, Public Works, Recycling, and Highway are three separate departments,
Okay.
you know? And as amount of time I spend in the recycling center, I spend a lot of time there, but I don't care. Jerry wants to do, that's fine. He works with Brian very well. Financial Advisory Committee, Amber and Jerry. Senior Center, Jerry and Meg.
Mhm.
We are okay with that? Taylor's Island, we have done. Transportation, Jerry, they meet just periodically. That's usually on, I've gone to a few of those meetings.
What is that? What is that?
Transportation? Yeah, it involves.
Really?
Senior van?
They're monitoring our rail line.
No, to be honest with you,
The bridge committee.
to be honest with you, they're involved with everything, but they're also involved with the regional traffic, like North Fork, South
Okay.
Fork.
Yeah.
So I've gone to meetings there about, whether we're going to make 25 two-lane or,
Yeah.
or Sound Avenue and
Mhm.
how we can move traffic along. It's interesting meetings, but they're usually in Riverhead.
Yeah.
So we're moving Jerry to that, or you're staying on that?
Or you're not that, you're
I
not,
don't care, Jerry. You want me to stay on that or you want to do that? Transportation.
It's all yours.
All right. All right.
who's doing that? What's going on?
Jim.
They meet
Jim.
they meet maybe twice a year.
Yeah, I
if-
was gonna
if
say,
that.
remember Chris Lewis used to go.
So IT, we've already done, Shelter Island Country Club, I've been there. Peconic Estuary, I've been a member of that. Health and Wellness, I continue to do that one.
And website, Amber.
And that's, by the way, that Health and Wellness is a big time consumer for me, but I enjoy working with the ladies. They're very
What
good
about
people.
liaison to the ethics or liaison to the contractor? No?
You work on their own.
Okay.
Yeah, we actually do need. people
Contractor
for the
review board.
Contractor review committee, because at the moment it's just me. It used to be
Yeah.
me, Albert. and
Ah.
Mark.
Add contractor review board.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
was gonna say, I forgot about contractor review board. And also, who's the liaison for the airfield?
Wasn't me.
That could become
I'm
significant.
not sure there was one.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'll take it then, just because I,
Is
You were-
that okay?
You were dealing with the lease stuff.
yeah, I was gonna say, I was dealing with the lease stuff and I talked to Jim Key the other day.
Who's taking contract review board?
I'll be happy to.
All right,
We need a
That-
second though.
that's BJ, and you're taking the airfield?
Yes, but I think we need a second for the contractor review board.
I'd recommend Meg, because one of the things in statute is you're supposed to have somebody that's involved with contracting in some way.
Well, then there you go.
There you
Okay,
go. So who's taking the airfield? Amber?
I am.
As they said, going out the door, it will be the biggest obstacle we have in the proposal is the people that live around the airfield with placing this down there. Yeah, I just, as well as Cockles Harbor people. But that will be, you can anticipate that will be the
Mhm,
major stumbling block if in fact we decide to go there.
mhm.
All right, that covers that.
Did you send this to us as a PDF or as an Excel spreadsheet?
I think an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay. Do you want to just update it for?
Yeah.
Okay. and
I'll
then-
update and I'll email
then
to
we'll-
everybody.
All right,
Yeah.
Great, great. Thanks.
Okay.
all right.
Thank
got it.
you.
Thank you.
Yeah, then we can all
I
review,
didn't
make
get what
sure
you got.
Yeah.
all our notes.
There you
Make
go.
sure I do it right and then we'll.
Can you give it to Christina? Christina, could you then fill in the meeting times that are sort of set? That'd be great. And then go to everybody. That'd be great.
All right.
Perfect. And then the last.
Is there a reason for, does John have to state if we're just going into executive session and?
No, we still
We
have
have, we
You got a
still,
All right,
couple.
we have
all right.
Item 5.
Cobra. Yeah, there
board
was-
member reports.
yeah, there was a last minute add on to the agenda.
Who's
for
got that?
Cobra. Did we all get the email?
I did.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it has to do with employees who are leaving who decide to take Cobra. We haven't had anyone do that, so we don't really have a policy. The town is, by law, can charge a 2% for,
Amber, we
dealing-
currently have a couple of spouses whose partners
Widows.
died.
Oh,
And
that's
they
right,
have
yes.
Cobra.
yes,
So
so
they
they
pay the
pay,
Cobra, but not the
Mhm.
administrative piece.
yeah, we have not charged them the administrative.
And what is the fee?
2%. So on.
2%.
it
And
would
It's a little
end
over
up-
$600 a year.
Yeah, on top of already a big bill.
Yes.
But, and it does take some administration. Do we know how much
Well,
administration?
we're already Amber and I had this conversation, BJ,
Yeah.
with Barbara. We're already doing the paperwork. So it's not like it's a whole lot, and it is a pretty substantial amount for the people to pick up on their own. So, I mean, to me, charging them an extra 600 is like kicking them when they're down. So
I agree.
Yeah, and also I don't, like the extra amount of work, it's not so much that we need to compensate the employee who's doing, for that extra little tiny bit. Like
It
if we
gets
had to-
folded in.
If we had to increase salaries to cover.
Right.
it, I would say yes.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, I feel more for the extra fee on top of a huge premium.
Right.
So Bob, do we have to put that in the policy manual?
I'll add it to the policy manual. I'm doing the revisions probably later this week anyhow.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so next would be board member report. So, yeah, as far as letting John off out the door, I'm like, I don't know until we get
All
to
right.
the end of the meeting.
So
just
can I
sort of
start?
feel
I'll
like-
go
We're
real
in public
fast.
session probably
Yeah.
under these current laws.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
last week I was doing a capital planning and I'll do this in 2 minutes. All right, I won't repeat what I said last time. On the new business, I listed the 8 major infrastructure. I gave copies to everybody. You should have these.
Mhm.
Not if you need a copy, here's a
Yes,
copy.
please, thank you.
So they're listed. And on the back, we talked about the priorities for 2022. And I listed 5 priorities, which the committee agreed to: road elevations, including mitigation measures, ADA compliance for the town, which we're starting on, feasibility studies, the 4 of them, and talked about the one today, community housing, and solar paneling for the new recycling center roof, which we have not budgeted for, but we need to address. And I'm trying to work with Jen to try to work anything and everything that we possibly can towards that end. All right, anybody have any questions on that? I gave a copy to everybody. Last night, the CAC met. All 4 wetlands reviews we approved by a count of 5-0. We did have all 5 members present, including John Riley, who was present. And we tried working around John so that he works every other Monday. So we're going to try to work around his schedule so we truly get 5 people there. But that was Graff and Ryan at 12 Petticoat. That was approved. Again, there'll be a number of recommendations on each one of these approvals, but I'm not going to go through them now. We'll go through them on a Friday. The Valamir and Jessica Colas at 8 Westmoreland Drive. I took pictures of all these properties, by the way, and they actually were very handy last night when we went through with them. McCarthy at Locust Avenue, we approved, and Goodson application, we also approved. We talked about new members for the CAC. Again, we're going to approach Dan Berner after the holiday. His father just passed away 10 days ago, and we're going to wait. We've made assignments to go to not new properties, the town-owned properties, to do our annual review of those properties. So they're going to conduct that. And in the winter, we are also going to take on Code Section 129, Wetlands Code. Both co-chair people want us to take a look at that, carefully. So that was basically the meeting last night. I have a meeting tomorrow with Stella, Joe Fenora, and the Peconic Estuary Partnership on the Heights Treatment Plan. I'll let you know. I was very firm with, I talked about it with Stella yesterday, and we had a good conversation. So I think we'll move down that path, tomorrow. Okay. All right. The last thing I have is just, I think we need to go into executive session a little bit. I think we have the building department, we need to talk. You know, we can't put this
We-
off
we
week to
need
week. We need to talk about what's happening. You know,
Person-
when you lose
personnel.
2 key people out of one department of virtually 5 people at this time of the year, we have to have a plan moving forward. And then we got to at least begin some discussion. We received a nice 6-page letter, 5 or 6-page letter from
That's
Reed
good.
Karen. I think we should discuss that, some of the things he expressed in that. So
Is that executive session material or open session material?
Depends on what way you're going to be discussing
It's-
personnel. I think you could bring it, I would start it out in executive session in case there's anything that's.
I think there is some
Personally based, we can always bring it in.
personnel-based
Yeah.
things, yes.
Okay.
It's a
so
good point,
people-
Amber.
it's-
I-
Yeah, people, not positions.
You were
Yeah, I
gonna
think
be talking
ultimately there'll be-
strengths.
I think ultimately how we structure the department will be an open session thing, but dealing with the personnel
Mhm.
and the individual situation should be executive session.
I just want to make sure we're
Yeah, I have one
doing
other,
it
I have
correctly.
one other personnel thing in that I can't, I need to, in executive session to discuss with you.
Jim, I just want to, again, I probably don't bring this in the right place, but you can keep correcting me. But Heights wastewater treatment, we've mentioned that it's going to take additional study.
Yes,
down- for
and
the
that's what, and
downstream
Stella's on,
wells.
Stella's on the
Mhm,
thing,
yeah.
that we're seeking funding for that
Because I,
purpose.
yeah, you were unsure, and I just want to say that if
And-
there's a voice here, I really want that to go forward. If
Yeah.
we, the study. I mean,
Yeah.
I know it's money.
Yeah, no, we're gonna try to, make that happen. And by the way, the bottom line was, so everybody understands this.
Yeah.
The studies, even if that part of the recharge and the irrigation doesn't happen, having that study and knowing the flow of water up in that area with the amount of wells that we have there, is all good information. Just like Stella and the town values the information we got out of the feasibility study for the Heights treatment plant,
Yeah.
which was good information to know
Yeah.
as we move forward. And it's good information for both the town and for the Heights. I think this information too could be good. We're just hoping that we're going to push it tomorrow with Peconic Estuary Partnership to hopefully get the money to fund that.
At least some,
Okay.
or some of it. I mean, I'm okay.
Stella, do you have
It's not-
anything else that you wanted to
I just
say on
think
that?
it's important if we can do this.
No, Jim, well, yes. The good news is that the call from Joyce Novak came through Bridget Fleming's office. So Bridget, I believe, is still a very strong proponent to try to get this done. So she's going to be a good sponsor and can continue to be. So I'm hopeful that with a new pocket of money that Joyce is working on with the county, that we maybe can get a few shekels from there.
Yeah, okay.
Good.
Thank you, Stella. And I'll see you tomorrow. I'm probably going to call in on that. I won't be on a Zoom, but I'll call in.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, that's it for me.
DJ?
Nothing.
Okay, I just have one, EMS met last week for the quarterly meeting. They're working on the paid augmentation. So as a reminder, we had our, highest level of EMT retiring at the end of this year. Thank you, Phil Power, for all the years that you've put in. And we had budgeted, I think it's 132,000 for paid coverage. So they're working on all the, particulars in that happen.
Yeah.
And then they're changing up their training a little bit. They're used to, pre-COVID is when, the training would take place up mostly in the Rochester area, and people would go up and be gone for a good part of a week. They're doing small bite training, 1 hour per week on hot topics or on, something pertaining to escalating, like this type of call is happening more frequently. We'll do training on that type of call.
Mhm.
So that's a nice way that they're keeping the training going and relevant. And that's all that I had. Jerry?
No, I don't have anything.
Okay.
BJ?
Jerry, Anthony Rando, are we putting that off then because he's
No,
not here?
no, it's just a resolution. We're not actually swearing him in. It's just a resolution.
All right,
that
so you
Jimmy-
want,
Yeah, he's
So the
online.
chief can go forward.
okay.
You have it,
So you
Doc?
want,
They're both online, so.
you want to sign?
Yeah.
All right, so we're having a special meeting So we'll close the work session, or I
Yes.
guess recess the work session for a minute and open a special meeting. And
Want me to read the resolution?
yes, I was going to say, Dottie, you got it.
Yep. Be it resolved that Anthony Rando is hereby appointed Service Sergeant of the Shelter Island Police Department effective January 13th, 2022. So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Anthony.
Yes,
Congratulations, Anthony.
well done.
Yeah, Amber, I'd
Thank
just
you.
like to
Thank you.
say publicly that we interviewed 3 candidates for the job, and all 3 were outstanding. If we could have taken any one of them. It made us all, I think we can all say we're very proud of all 3 of them, and Anthony was our choice.
Okay. All right,
So we'll close that special meeting, reopen the work session.
comments from them?
I was going to say, any comments from the public? We have a partial public in the room and no comments from her.
Julie's on the line here. Does she have anything?
Nothing,
Julie Lane, you have anything?
Nothing, thank you.
All right.
So we'll make a motion to go into executive session to discuss personnel matters.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Right.